The October wind cut through Michael Reynolds' worn leather jacket as he watched his 6-year-old twin daughters chase each other through the golden wheat field. Sophie's pigtails bounced with each step, while Sarah lagged behind, stopping to examine every interesting rock and flower along the way. Michael smiled, his weathered hands adjusting the faded military cap that had accompanied him through 2 tours in Afghanistan. "Daddy, look what I found," Sarah called out, holding up a smooth riverstone with both hands as if it were treasure. Michael's smile deepened, creating a web of lines around his eyes that told stories of both joy and hardship. At 45, he'd been raising the girls alone since their mother Elizabeth had died in a car accident 5 years ago, leaving him with 2 toddlers in a grief that cut deeper than any wound he'd received in combat. The Reynolds Ranch in Montana had become his sanctuary, a place where he could give his daughters the stability and peace he'd fought to protect overseas. But as they approached the old wooden fence that bordered Highway 89, Michael's smile vanished, his body tensed, military instincts kicking in before his conscious mind processed the scene. A woman sat slumped against a fence post, her designer clothes torn and dirty. Blood trickled from a cut above her left eyebrow, and her long auburn hair was matted with dust. Her expensive SUV sat in the ditch 20 yards away, steam rising from its crumpled hood. "Stay back, girls," Michael commanded, his voice sharp with authority. Years of giving orders in life-or-death situations had ingrained that tone in him. The girls froze immediately, recognizing when their father wasn't to be questioned. The woman looked up as he approached, and Michael felt his breath catch. Despite the injuries endured, she was strikingly beautiful, with emerald eyes that held a mixture of pain and something else he recognized immediately: fear. The kind of fear he'd seen in villages under siege in the eyes of people who knew they were being hunted. "Ma'am, are you hurt?" he asked, automatically scanning the surroundings for threats as he approached. "I'm Michael Reynolds. This is my land." She tried to stand but winced, clutching her left arm. I'm Rachel. Rachel Blackwood." Her eyes darted nervously to the road, then back to him. "My car." She gestured weakly toward the wreckage. Michael's eyes narrowed slightly. The name Blackwood rang a bell. Tech industry, billions in assets. The kind of wealth that made headlines and created enemies. "We need to get you to a hospital," Michael said, already reaching for his phone. "No." Rachel's voice was sharp, almost panicked. Her hands shot out to grab his wrist with surprising strength. "Please, no hospitals, no police. I need somewhere safe to think." The desperation in her eyes made Michael hesitate. His instincts told him this woman was in real danger, not just from her injuries. The twins had crept closer, despite his warning, their curiosity overcoming their obedience. "Is the pretty lady hurt, Daddy?" Sophie whispered, her small hand slipping into his. Rachel's expression softened as she looked at the twins. "Hello, beautiful girls. What are your names?" "I'm Sophie, and that's Sarah. We're 6, Sophie announced, pointing to the identical sister, half hidden behind their father's leg. "Daddy, can we help her?" Sarah asked, her tender heart already engaged despite her shyness. Michael studied Rachel's face, noting the genuine warmth that appeared when she looked at his daughters. 20 years in special forces had taught him to read people in seconds. It was a skill that had kept him and his men alive. Something in her eyes reminded him of a wounded animal, dangerous if cornered, but desperate for kindness. "The farmhouse is just over that hill," he found himself saying, making a decision based on instinct rather than logic. "You can clean up, and we'll figure out what to do next." As he helped Rachel to her feet, supporting her weight with the same steady strength that had carried wounded comrades across battlefields, Michael Reynolds had no idea he just made a decision that would transform all their lives forever. The Reynolds farmhouse stood like a sentinel against the Montana sky, its white clapboard siding and red brick chimney telling stories of 4 generations of honorable men who had worked this land when not answering their country's call to arms. Every Reynolds man since the Civil War had served, and the family had the folded flags to prove it. Michael helped Rachel up the front porch steps while Sophie and Sarah raced ahead to open the screen door. "Careful on that bottom step. It's been loose for months," Michael warned, steadying Rachel as she stumbled slightly. He made a mental note to fix it today. Procrastination wasn't a luxury a single father could afford, especially one who had learned in the harshest environments that small oversights could have fatal consequences. Inside, the house breathed warmth and lived in comfort. Family photos lined the mantel above a stone fireplace, and children's drawings covered the refrigerator. Among the happy images of the twins and their father were several of a beautiful blonde woman with a radiant smile, Elizabeth forever frozen in time. "Sit here," Michael guided Rachel to the kitchen table. "Let me get the first aid kit." His medical training had been put to use more often with skinned knees and bee stings lately, but he still maintained the efficiency of a combat medic. While Michael rummaged through cabinets, Rachel studied the photographs scattered across a side table. One showed Michael in his dress uniform, stern and powerful. Another captured him teaching the twins to ride their first bicycles, his protective hands hovering just inches from their seats. "Where's their mother?" Rachel asked quietly when Michael returned with the medical supplies. Michael's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. "Car accident, 5 years ago. Drunk driver crossed the center line." The words were clipped efficient, conveying information without emotion, a soldier's report. But Rachel didn't miss the flash of pain in his eyes or the way his hand unconsciously moved to the wedding band he still wore. He began cleaning the cut on Rachel's forehead with gentle efficiency, his large calloused hands surprisingly delicate. The girls barely remember her now. Sometimes that seems worse than the grief. Sarah appeared at Rachel's elbow, clutching a well-loved teddy bear missing one eye. "This is Captain Whiskers. He makes everything better when you're hurt." Rachel accepted the bear with tears threatening. "Thank you, sweetie. He's perfect." "Can you stay for dinner?" Sophie asked hopefully. "Daddy makes the best stew in Montana. He learned to cook in the Army." Michael caught Rachel's eye. "You're welcome to stay until you feel ready to handle whatever you need to handle." The offer was simple, direct, a soldier's approach to a problem. Identify the need, address it, move forward. For the first time since the accident, Rachel felt safe. But safety was a luxury she couldn't afford right now. Not with everything that had happened in Seattle. Not with the decisions she'd made that led her to run. "I should probably call someone," she said, reaching for her purse before remembering it was still in the wreckage. "Your phone was smashed in the crash," Michael observed. "Who do you need to reach family?" Rachel's laugh was bitter. "Family isn't exactly an option right now." The twins exchanged glances with the intuitive communication only twins possessed. Sarah climbed onto the chair next to Rachel while Sophie leaned against her father's side. "When I'm scared, Daddy tells me stories about the brave soldiers," Sarah offered. "Would you like to hear about the time Daddy saved a whole village?" Rachel smiled genuinely for the first time since the crash. "I'd love that." As Sarah launched into an elaborately embellished tale of her father's heroism, Rachel felt something she hadn't experienced in years, peace. But even as she listened to the child's sweet voice, her mind raced with the complications of her situation. Someone would be looking for her soon. The people she'd trusted, the empire she'd built, the enemies she'd made, they would all want answers. And when they found her here in this perfect little world that Michael Reynolds had created for his daughters, she would destroy it all. The weight of that knowledge settled on her shoulders like a lead blanket, even as Sophie began adding dramatic sound effects to her sister's story. What Rachel didn't realize was that Michael Reynolds was watching her with the careful assessment of a man who had spent decades identifying threats, and he saw far more than she intended to reveal. Dawn broke over the Montana plains with the kind of spectacular beauty that made Michael grateful every morning for the choice to stay on his family's land after his discharge. He'd been up since 0500, as always checking the property perimeter, a habit from his military days he couldn't break before tending to the horses and planning the day's work. But this morning felt different, charged with an energy he couldn't name. Rachel was still asleep in the guest room upstairs, the first real rest she'd gotten judging by the dark circles under her eyes yesterday. The twins had insisted she stay until she felt all better, and Michael found himself hoping that would take a while despite the complications her presence might bring. "Daddy, is Miss Rachel going to live with us now?" Sarah asked over breakfast syrup dripping from her waffle onto her pajamas. "She's just visiting sweetheart. She has her own life to get back to." Michael wiped the syrup with practiced efficiency, his movements economical and precise. "But what if she likes it here better?" Sophie added, with 6-year-old logic. "Maybe she could be our new mom." Michael nearly choked on his coffee. "Girls, that's not how it works. Miss Rachel is a very important businesswoman with responsibilities." "What kind of business?" Sarah wanted to know. Before Michael could answer, Rachel appeared in the doorway wearing one of his flannel shirts over her torn clothes. Her hair was pulled back in a simple ponytail, and without makeup, she looked younger, more vulnerable. "Good morning," she said softly. "I hope you don't mind. I borrowed this." "Of course not." Michael felt a strange tightness in his chest as he took in how natural she looked in his kitchen. "There's coffee and I can make you breakfast." "Coffee sounds perfect." Rachel accepted the mug Michael offered, inhaling the rich aroma. "I can't remember the last time I woke up without an alarm clock or a crisis to manage." "What do you do for work?" Sophie asked with typical directness. Rachel hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "I run a technology company that helps people connect and share information securely." "Something like that," Rachel replied with a small smile. Michael studied Rachel's face, noting the way she avoided details. In his experience, people who were vague about their work were either lying or in trouble. Given what he knew about the Blackwood fortune and tech empire, he suspected it was the latter. "The phone company is supposed to fix our landline today," he said casually. "You'll be able to make any calls you need." A shadow crossed Rachel's features. "Actually, I was hoping to stay off the grid for a few more days." Would that be possible?" "Are you in some kind of trouble?" Michael asked directly, his eyes locking onto hers. 20 years in special operations had taught him to confront situations head on. Rachel sat down her coffee cup, her hands trembling slightly. "It's complicated. Most things worth fighting for are." The simple wisdom in Michael's response surprised Rachel. In her world of corporate boardrooms and power plays, nothing was ever stated so plainly. "There are people who are very angry with me right now," she admitted. "I made some decisions that, well, they didn't like the consequences." "Good decisions or bad decisions?" Michael asked quietly, his moral compass as straightforward as the rest of him. "The right decisions." Rachel's voice grew stronger. "But that doesn't always matter to some people." Sophie and Sarah listened with the grave attention children reserve for adult conversations they sense are important but don't fully understand. "Will the angry people hurt you?" Sarah asked, her tender heart already attached to their unexpected guest. Rachel knelt to Sarah's level, her voice gentle but honest. "I hope not, sweetie, but sometimes grown-ups have to be very careful about who they trust." "You can trust Daddy," Sophie declared, with absolute certainty. "He saved so many people in the war, and he always keeps his promises." Over the twins' heads, Rachel met Michael's steady gaze. In his eyes, she saw something she'd forgotten existed in her world of corporate duplicity, uncomplicated integrity. The kind of honor that couldn't be bought or manipulated. "I believe that," Rachel said softly. But as the morning sun climbed higher, painting the kitchen in golden light, Rachel knew her time in this sanctuary was running out. The real world had a way of finding people no matter how far they ran. By afternoon, the peaceful rhythm of ranch life had begun to work its magic on Rachel's frayed nerves. She sat on the front porch watching Michael repair the loose step with methodical precision while the twins helped by sorting nails and offering enthusiastic commentary. "Higher, Daddy. Bad guys might sneak through if it's too low," Sophie called out, displaying the security-minded thinking she'd absorbed from her father. "Bad guys don't come to Montana, silly," Sarah corrected. "It's too far from the city." Rachel smiled, remembering when life had seemed that simple. Her phone, the backup one hidden in her jacket pocket, had been buzzing intermittently all morning, but she'd resisted the urge to check it. "You're good with them," Michael observed, taking a water break and sitting beside her on the porch swing. "Natural. They're special girls. You've done an amazing job raising them alone." Rachel watched as Sarah tenderly bandaged a scrape on her doll's arm, while Sophie constructed an elaborate fort for her toy horses. "Some days I wonder if they're missing out not having a mother figure." Michael's voice carried the weight of responsibility he never put down, not even for a moment. "They're learning kindness, resilience, and independence. Those are gifts not every child receives, even with two parents." Rachel's voice held the wisdom of someone who knew that truth personally. "What about you, family?" The question hit Rachel like a physical blow. She was quiet for so long that Michael began to apologize for prying, but she held up a hand. "I was engaged once 3 years ago. We were planning—" She swallowed hard. "We were planning everything. The wedding, children, a future beyond the company." "What happened?" Michael's directness was oddly comforting. "I discovered that my fiancé David had been systematically stealing intellectual property from my company. Technology worth billions selling it to our competitors and foreign governments. Rachel's voice hardened. When I confronted him, he tried to turn it around, made it seem like I was the problem for not trusting him. Michael's face darkened. That's when you made the decisions that have people angry. Rachel nodded. I could have handled it quietly, covered it up to avoid scandal. Instead, I turned over everything to the FBI. David's now serving 15 years in federal prison, but his family, she trailed off. They're powerful people, Michael finished for her, and they've made it their mission to destroy you. Partly, Rachel's voice dropped to a whisper. But there's more. Last week I discovered that David wasn't working alone. Some of my most trusted executives, people I considered family, were involved. When I started investigating, I found evidence of something much bigger. A conspiracy to sell our security protocols to hostile foreign intelligence services. The weight of her confession hung in the air between them. Michael reached over and covered her hand with his own, the simple gesture more comforting than any words could have been. That's why you can't go to the police, he realized. You don't know who to trust. I don't know who's been compromised. The corruption goes too high, touches too many people with influence. Rachel's voice cracked. I've been running for 3 days trying to figure out how to expose the truth without getting myself killed in the process. Sarah appeared at Rachel's side, having approached with the silent stealth that children master when they sense adult distress. Are you crying because you're hurt? Rachel pulled the little girl into her lap, grateful for the innocent comfort. Sometimes grown-ups cry when their hearts hurt, not just their bodies. Daddy says when your heart hurts, you need extra hugs and hot chocolate with the tiny marshmallows, Sarah said with complete conviction. That sounds like very wise advice. Rachel smiled through her tears. Sophie joined the group hug, and for a moment Rachel felt surrounded by the kind of uncomplicated love she'd forgotten existed. But even as she held these precious children, her mind was calculating how much danger she was bringing to their doorstep. As if reading her thoughts, Michael spoke quietly. Whatever you're facing, you don't have to face it alone anymore. Rachel closed her eyes, allowing herself one moment to imagine what it would be like to truly have someone like Michael Reynolds in her corner, someone whose word was his bond, whose strength wasn't just physical, but moral. Michael Reynolds, she said suddenly, the name finally clicking into place in her memory. You were with the 5th Special Forces Group in Afghanistan. Kunar Province, 2013. Michael's body tensed, his eyes narrowing. How do you know that? Because my brother was there. Thomas Blackwood. You pulled him from a burning Humvee after an IED attack. Rachel's voice trembled. He said a Staff Sergeant Reynolds carried him 3 miles to the extraction point under enemy fire the entire way. Michael's expression remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed his surprise. Your brother was Lieutenant Blackwood. The intelligence officer, Rachel nodded. He died 2 years ago, cancer from exposure to burn pits. But he never forgot what you did. He said you were the most honorable man he had ever met. The silence between them was heavy with the weight of this unexpected connection, this thread of shared history that bound them together before they'd ever met. I'm sorry about your brother, Michael said finally. He was a good officer, cared about his men. And now, by some twist of fate, I've ended up at your doorstep? Rachel shook her head in disbelief. I don't believe in coincidences, Michael said firmly. Not in combat, not in life. Before Rachel could respond, Michael's satellite phone rang the emergency line he kept for ranch business when the landline was down. The twins knew not to interrupt when that phone rang, immediately retreating to their toys on the porch. Reynolds, he answered, his voice clipped and professional. Rachel watched as his expression darkened, his jaw tightening as he listened to the caller. When he asked, how many? Another pause. Understood. Thanks for the heads up, Bill. He ended the call, his eyes immediately scanning the horizon, the instinctive situation assessment of a combat veteran. What is it? Rachel asked, her heart pounding. That was Bill Tanner, sheriff's deputy, and an old friend. Says 2 black SUVs with Seattle plates were asking questions at the gas station in town, looking for a woman matching your description. Michael's voice was calm, but his body had shifted into alert mode. Said they flashed some kind of corporate security badges, claimed you were a missing executive having a mental health crisis. Rachel's blood ran cold. How quickly can they get here? 30 minutes, maybe less. Michael was already moving his mind, formulating tactical options. We need to move. Now. I've put you and the girls in danger. I should never have stayed. Rachel's voice was laced with regret. Michael's hand on her shoulder stopped her self-recrimination. Rachel, listen to me. I've spent my entire adult life protecting people from those who would harm them. I'm not about to stop now, especially not when the sister of one of my men needs help. His eyes, hard as steel, met hers. Now we have two options. You can run again alone, or you can trust me to help you fight this the right way. There is no right way, Rachel protested. These people have resources you can't imagine. So did the Taliban, Michael replied evenly, and I'm still here. Despite everything, Rachel felt a smile tug at her lips. Are you always this stubborn? My late wife called it pathologically determined. For the first time, Michael's mention of Elizabeth came with a brief smile rather than pain. The girls' overnight bags are always packed habit from my military days. Be ready to move in 5 minutes. As Michael efficiently gathered supplies and secured the house, Rachel marveled at his calm precision. In her world, emergencies were met with panic, shouting, and chaos. Michael moved with the quiet competence of a man who had faced true crises and learned that emotion only hindered action. Within minutes, the twins were buckled into Michael's reinforced SUV, their overnight bags stowed alongside emergency supplies that Rachel suspected Michael always kept ready. They didn't question their father's sudden decision to visit Uncle Jack's cabin, another sign of the trust and security he had built with them. Where are we actually going? Rachel asked quietly as they pulled away from the ranch, taking a back road that wound through the property rather than the main entrance. First, to get your evidence, Michael said, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors. You said you have proof of the conspiracy. Everything's in a safety deposit box in Denver. Financial records, recorded conversations, technical specifications of what was stolen. I set it up 3 years ago when I first suspected David. It's under my grandmother's maiden name. Michael nodded, processing the information with military efficiency. Denver's 6 hours south. We'll take back roads, switch vehicles at my buddy's place in Livingston. The girls know the drill. We used to do adventure trips when I was still having bad episodes after my discharge. Rachel glanced at the twins in the back seat, already engrossed in the tablets Michael had given them for the journey. They're so adaptable. Kids are resilient when they feel secure, Michael replied. They know I'd never let anything happen to them. As they drove through the Montana countryside, Michael outlined his plan with the precision of a mission briefing. They would avoid main highways, use cash only, and stay off the grid until they reached Denver. There they would retrieve the evidence and determine the best way to expose the conspiracy. You make it sound so straightforward, Rachel said, admiration creeping into her voice despite her anxiety. Planning is straightforward. Execution rarely is. Michael's hands were steady on the wheel, his eyes constantly scanning their surroundings. But having a clear objective helps cut through the noise. And what is our objective exactly? Michael glanced at her, his expression resolute. Get the evidence. Expose the truth. Keep you and my daughter safe, in that order. As the Montana landscape rolled past their windows, Rachel found herself drawing strength from Michael's certainty. For the first time in weeks, she wasn't just running away from danger, she was moving toward a solution with an ally she hadn't expected, but already trusted with her life. What neither of them knew was that the danger was far greater than corporate espionage and revenge. The conspiracy Rachel had uncovered reached into government agencies, including the FBI itself, and the people hunting her would stop at nothing to protect their operation, even if it meant eliminating a decorated veteran and his innocent daughters. The first test of Michael's plan came sooner than expected. As they approached the outskirts of Livingston, a police cruiser appeared in their rearview mirror, lights flashing. Stay calm, Michael instructed, his voice level, as he pulled to the side of the road. Let me do the talking. Rachel's heart hammered in her chest as the officer approached. Had they been found already? Michael rolled down his window, his posture relaxed but alert. Afternoon, officer. The policeman bent down, studying Michael's face, then broke into a grin. Mike Reynolds, you old son of a gun. Thought that was you. Michael's shoulders relaxed slightly. Dave Harrison. Didn't know you were with the highway patrol now. 3 years now. How are those beautiful girls of yours? Growing too fast. Girls say hello to Officer Harrison. He served with me in Iraq. The twins waved enthusiastically from the back seat. Hello, Officer Dave. Harrison's eyes shifted to Rachel. And who's this lovely lady, family friend from Seattle? Michael replied smoothly. Rachel, this is Dave Harrison, best demolitions man in the 10th Mountain Division. Rachel managed a smile, hoping her fear didn't show. Nice to meet you. Harrison studied her for a moment longer than necessary, then turned back to Michael. Where you headed, Mike? Taking the girls to visit Jack at his fishing cabin. Thought we'd show Rachel some real Montana scenery. Harrison nodded, but his expression had changed subtly. Funny thing, got an alert about an hour ago. Corporate security looking for a missing executive. Woman matching your friend's description. The air in the SUV seemed to freeze. Rachel felt her mouth go dry. That's so, Michael's voice remained casual, but Rachel noticed his hand had moved slightly closer to the center console. Yeah. Harrison's eyes narrowed. Said she might be unstable, possibly dangerous. Recommended immediate detention if spotted. Michael held the officer's gaze. And what do you think, Dave? She looked dangerous to you? A long moment passed as Harrison looked from Michael to Rachel and back again. You know, he said finally, I never did put much stock in corporate types telling me how to do my job. He straightened up. Whatever you're involved in, Mike, I'm guessing you've got good reason. You always did. I appreciate that, Dave. Harrison lowered his voice. But listen, two men in suits were asking questions at the diner in town. Not locals. You might want to take the mountain route to Jack's place. Less traffic this time of year. Michael nodded, understanding the warning. Thanks for the tip. And Mike, Harrison added, his expression serious. Whatever this is, be careful. You've got those girls to think about. Always do. As they pulled away, Rachel released the breath she'd been holding. He knows something's wrong. Dave's a good man. Saved my life once outside Fallujah. Michael's eyes were fixed on the road ahead. But he's right about one thing: we need to change our route. Michael turned off the main road onto a narrow gravel path that wound up into the foothills. This old logging road adds 2 hours to the trip, but it'll keep us away from main checkpoints. As they climbed higher into the mountains, the twins chattering happily in the back seat about the adventure, Rachel studied Michael's profile. The determined set of his jaw, the vigilant eyes that never stopped scanning their surroundings, the capable hands that held the wheel with confident ease. Thank you, she said quietly, for risking everything to help me. Michael glanced at her briefly. Lieutenant Blackwood would have done the same for my family. But they both knew it was more than that now. In the space of 24 hours, their lives had become intertwined in ways neither could have anticipated. They reached Jack's cabin as dusk was falling, the small structure nestled among pine trees overlooking a serene mountain lake. Jack Murdoch, a former Army Ranger who had served with Michael in Afghanistan, greeted them with gruff warmth and knowing eyes. Trouble, he asked simply after the twins had been settled inside with hot chocolate and a Disney movie. The kind that follows, Michael confirmed, keeping his voice low on the cabin's porch. Jack nodded, requiring no further explanation. My truck's gassed up, untraceable, and I've got some gear you might need. He glanced at Rachel. You must be important if Mike's pulled out the evac protocol for you. She's Lieutenant Blackwood's sister. Michael said, the simple explanation carrying weight with both men. Recognition flashed in Jack's eyes. Thomas Blackwood, hell of an officer. He spoke highly of both of you, Rachel said quietly. Jack's weathered face softened slightly. Well, any family of Lieutenant Blackwood is family to us. My cabin's yours as long as you need it. While the twins watched their movie, the adults gathered around the kitchen table speaking in hushed tones. Rachel explained the full extent of the conspiracy she had uncovered, how her company's security technology had been compromised and sold to hostile intelligence services, how the FBI investigation into David had mysteriously stalled, and how her own security team had been infiltrated. This goes beyond corporate espionage, Jack said grimly. Sounds like a national security breach. That's why I can't just go to the authorities, Rachel explained. I don't know who's been compromised. Michael spread out a map of the region. We need to get to Denver, retrieve Rachel's evidence, and find someone we can trust to take it to. I might know someone, Jack said thoughtfully. Anna Kelly, former JAG attorney, now works for the Inspector General's office. Investigated corruption cases in military contracting. She's straight as they come. Can you reach out to her? Michael asked. Carefully, Jack nodded. I'll use the secure channels from my consultant days. But you two should get some rest. Denver's still a long drive, and if they're already searching locally, you'll want to move at first light. Later, after the twins had been tucked into bed in the cabin's small loft, Rachel found Michael on the porch, his silhouette outlined against the star-filled Montana sky. Will the girls be safe here? She asked, wrapping a borrowed sweater tightly around herself against the mountain chill. Jack's place is as secure as they come. Off-grid, defensible, and Jack's, well, let's just say he's still very good at what he used to do. Michael's confidence was unwavering. They'll be safer here than with us on the road. Rachel nodded, trusting his judgment. I keep thinking about what would have happened if I'd crashed my car anywhere else, if anyone else had found me. Michael turned to face her, his features half in shadow. I don't believe in coincidences, remember? Maybe there's a reason you ended up on my land. Like what? Like maybe your brother's still looking out for you. The sentiment was unexpected from such a practical man, but the sincerity in his voice was unmistakable. Rachel felt tears prick her eyes. I miss him every day. The best way to honor him is to finish this mission. Michael's voice was gentle but firm. Get some rest, Rachel. Tomorrow we retrieve your evidence and start fighting back. As Rachel turned to go inside, Michael's voice stopped her. Rachel, whatever happens, I give you my word we'll see this through, together. The promise hung in the cool night air between them, a soldier's oath, unbreakable and absolute. And for the first time since discovering the conspiracy, Rachel Blackwood truly believed she might survive it. Dawn hadn't yet broken when Michael gently shook Rachel awake. Time to move, he whispered. Jack's made contact with Vienna Kelly. She's willing to meet us, but only after she sees the evidence. Rachel dressed quickly in clothes Jack's daughter had left at the cabin, jeans, hiking boots, and a flannel shirt that was far more practical than her designer wardrobe. When she emerged from the bedroom, Michael was kneeling before his daughters, speaking to them in low, reassuring tones. You're going to stay with Uncle Jack for a couple of days while Miss Rachel and I take care of some important business, he explained. Is it a secret mission, Daddy? Sophie asked, her eyes wide with excitement. Michael smiled, ruffling her hair. Something like that pumpkin. Are you going to catch bad guys? Sarah's question was earnest. We're going to try to make sure some bad people can't hurt anyone else, Michael answered truthfully. And then we'll come right back for you. Promise? Both girls asked in unison. I promise, Wafuano. Michael pulled them into a tight embrace, his eyes closing briefly over their heads, revealing the emotion he kept carefully controlled. You mind Uncle Jack, okay? And remember our code. If anything feels wrong, hide in the special place and use the special phone, Sophie recited dutifully. Rachel felt her heart constrict, realizing that Michael had prepared his daughters for danger, a necessary precaution for a former special operator with enemies. The goodbye was brief but emotional. Jack stood on the porch, a shotgun casually propped against the wall beside him, as Michael and Rachel climbed into his nondescript pickup truck. I'll guard them with my life, Jack promised simply. Michael nodded, the unspoken understanding between the men more powerful than any elaborate reassurance. As they drove away, Rachel noticed Michael checking the rearview mirror until the cabin disappeared from view. They'll be okay, she said softly. I know. Michael's voice was firm, but his white-knuckled grip on the steering wheel betrayed his concern. Jack would die before letting anything happen to them. The sun was just beginning to illuminate the eastern sky as they descended from the mountains, taking a circuitous route toward Denver. Michael drove with the focused intensity of a man on a mission, while Rachel studied the maps Jack had provided, plotting their approach to the city. The safety deposit box is at First National Bank downtown, Rachel explained. I've got the key and ID in my grandmother's name, Catherine Walsh. The only other person who knew about it was my lawyer, Patricia Hoffman. And you trust this lawyer? Michael's question was direct. Rachel's hesitation was telling. I used to. Patricia's been the family attorney for 15 years, but lately, she shook her head. I've learned not to trust anyone completely. Michael glanced at her profile, noting the weariness that seemed to have settled into her bones. Except us. Except you, Rachel admitted softly, surprised by how true it was. In just 2 days, she trusted this man more than people she'd known for years. They reached the outskirts of Denver as morning traffic was beginning to build. Michael navigated the urban streets with the same calm efficiency he'd shown in the Montana wilderness, eventually pulling into a parking garage several blocks from the bank. We approached separately. He instructed, reverting to mission mode. I'll enter first, secure the location, make sure there's no surveillance. You follow 5 minutes later. If anything feels wrong, you walk away immediately. We meet at the secondary location. Rachel nodded, understanding the precautions. How will I know if something's wrong? Michael reached into his jacket and handed her a small device that looked like a key fob. Panic button. Press it if you're in trouble and I'll come running. Press it twice if you spot surveillance and need to abort. The simple technology seemed almost primitive compared to the cutting-edge security systems Rachel's company developed, but there was a reassuring reliability to it. Ready? Michael asked, his eyes scanning her face. Rachel took a deep breath, steeling herself. Ready. Michael squeezed her hand briefly, a gesture of reassurance that carried more weight than words, before stepping out of the truck and walking toward the bank entrance. His posture was relaxed but alert, his eyes constantly scanning the street for threats. Rachel counted exactly 5 minutes on her watch before following the same path. Her heart pounded as she entered the bank's marble lobby, but she forced herself to maintain a calm exterior. She spotted Michael immediately, apparently filling out deposit slips at a counter, his position offering a clear view of both the entrance and the security desk. Their eyes met briefly, and he gave an almost imperceptible nod. The coast was clear. Rachel approached the bank officer, presented her identification as Catherine Walsh, and requested access to her safety deposit box. The process went smoothly, almost too smoothly, and soon she was being escorted to the vault area. Michael followed at a discreet distance, positioning himself near the vault entrance, ostensibly waiting for another bank officer. The safety deposit box sat exactly where Rachel had left it 3 years ago, when she'd first begun documenting David's suspicious activities. With hands that trembled slightly, she unlocked the box and removed its contents. Hard drives, printed documents, and a series of encrypted flash drives that contained everything needed to expose the entire conspiracy. Everything's here, she whispered to Michael as she passed him on her way out, transferring the evidence to a secure bag he had provided. But as they prepared to leave, the bank's front doors opened to reveal two men in dark suits, men whose bearing screamed federal agents or military. Their eyes scanned the lobby with predatory intensity. Michael's hand moved subtly to Rachel's lower back, guiding her toward a side hallway. Service exit, he murmured. Now. They moved with careful urgency, not running, but not dawdling, through the employee area and toward the back of the building. Behind them, they could hear the men asking questions at the reception desk. They found us, Rachel whispered, fear constricting her throat. Not yet, they haven't. Michael's voice was calm, his eyes already mapping their escape route. Remember your training. What training? A ghost of a smile touched Michael's lips, despite the danger. The training you're about to get. Follow my lead, stay close, and look like you belong here. They emerged into an alley behind the bank where delivery trucks were parked. Michael guided Rachel toward the service van, his demeanor changing subtly as they approached. Shoulders hunched, gait, awkward face arranged in a vacantly pleasant expression. Morning, sir, he called out to a startled delivery man in an exaggerated nasal voice, nothing like his own. Computer services for the third floor. Servers down again. The delivery man barely glanced at them as Michael ushered Rachel into the passenger seat of a nondescript sedan parked nearby. Within seconds, he had the engine running and was pulling calmly out of the alley. No squealing tires, no dramatic escape, just a normal car leaving a normal delivery area. How did you do that? Rachel asked, amazed by the transformation she'd just witnessed. Undercover work in Kandahar. Michael replied, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors as they merged into Denver's morning traffic. Sometimes the best way to hide is in plain sight. They were 3 blocks away when Rachel's phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Her blood ran cold as she read it. Michael, she whispered, showing him the screen. They know. The message was simple but chilling. We have Patricia Hoffman. You're next. Michael's expression hardened as he processed this new information. Call Jack, now. Rachel dialed with trembling fingers. Jack answered on the first ring. The girls, Michael asked without preamble. Safe, Jack confirmed. But we've got company in town asking questions, showing badges. FBI. That's what they claim. Something feels off, though. Michael's jaw tightened. Implement whiskey protocol. No one sees the girls, but you understood. Already done. Where are you headed? Plan B location. We'll contact you through the secure channel. As Michael ended the call, Rachel stared at him in growing horror. They're looking for your daughters. They won't find them. Michael's voice was steel absolute in its certainty. Jack's got them in a bunker that doesn't exist on any map. It's why we had the protocol ready. I'm so sorry, Rachel whispered. I've put your entire family in danger. No. Michael's response was immediate and firm. The people behind this conspiracy put us in danger, and now they've made their biggest mistake. What's that? Michael's eyes were cold as he navigated through the city streets, putting distance between them and the bank. They threatened my daughters. Now it's not just your fight anymore. It's mine. The determination in his voice should have been reassuring, but instead it sent a chill down Rachel's spine. She had brought the full weight of a powerful conspiracy down on this man and his innocent children. And while she had no doubt about Michael Reynolds' ability to protect his own, she wondered if even he could stand against the forces now aligned against them. What she didn't yet realize was that Michael Reynolds had spent his entire career fighting against impossible odds, and he wasn't about to start losing now, especially not when everything he loved was at stake. As they drove toward their secondary location, a safe house Jack had arranged through his private security contacts, Rachel began sifting through the evidence from the safety deposit box. This is worse than I thought, she said, scanning documents with growing alarm. The technology they stole, it's not just corporate espionage. They've sold access to our security infrastructure to foreign intelligence services, which means anyone using your systems is compromised, Michael concluded grimly. Government agencies, military. Rachel nodded, her face pale. Department of Defense, State Department, CIA field operations, they all use our encrypted communication platforms. Michael whistled softly. No wonder they're willing to kill to keep this quiet. This isn't just treason, it's potentially the largest intelligence breach since Snowden. And the FBI investigation into David suddenly makes sense, Rachel added. It stalled because someone inside the Bureau is involved. The safe house was a modest apartment in a nondescript building in Denver's suburbs, anonymous, secure, and equipped with the kind of communication technology that made Rachel realize Jack's consulting work involved more than just corporate security. As they settled in, Michael established a secure connection with Jack, confirming that the twins remained safe and undetected. Only then did he turn his full attention to the evidence Rachel had retrieved. We need to analyze everything, identify all the players, and find someone we can trust to take this to, he said, the tactical planner emerging again. Jack's contact, Anna Kelly, might be our best bet, but we need to be absolutely certain she's clean. Rachel nodded, already connecting a hard drive to the secure laptop Jack had provided. I can trace the money flows, identify who received payments and when. That should tell us who's involved. They worked side by side for hours, Michael bringing his intelligence analysis experience to bear on the complex web of corruption Rachel had uncovered. As night fell over Denver, the full picture began to emerge, and it was even more disturbing than they had feared. The operation is being run through a shell company based in Cyprus, Rachel explained, pointing to financial records on the screen. But the real control lies with a group within the FBI's counterintelligence division. Led by Deputy Director James Morrison, Michael added, studying a document that detailed payments to various officials. Morrison, Rachel looked up sharply. Any relation to you? Michael's expression was grim. Distant cousin. We're from the same extended family in Montana, but our branches haven't been close in generations. Do you know him? Met him once at a family funeral years ago. Ambitious, political, everything I'm not. Michael's voice was neutral, but Rachel sensed an old tension. The Reynolds family has two traditions, military service and law enforcement. My branch chose the military path. His chose badges and politics. Rachel studied his face, seeing the conflict behind his carefully controlled expression. And now he's at the center of this conspiracy. Which explains how they've been staying ahead of us, Michael concluded grimly. He'd have access to surveillance systems, travel records, everything needed to track you. And the authority to send federal agents after your daughters, Rachel added softly. Michael's eyes hardened at the reminder. He crossed a line there, one he'll regret. As they continued piecing together the conspiracy, Rachel's phone buzzed with another text message, this one from Patricia Hoffman's number. I'm sorry, Rachel. They made me tell them everything. The cabin isn't safe anymore. Michael was on his feet instantly, already dialing Jack. Change locations now, he ordered without preamble when Jack answered. Protocol Echo, they know about the cabin. Rachel could hear Jack's terse acknowledgement before Michael ended the call, his face a mask of controlled fury. We need to move too, he said, already gathering their equipment with military efficiency. If they compromise Patricia, this location might be exposed as well. Where will we go? Rachel asked, helping to pack the evidence. I have one more card to play. Michael's voice was grim but determined. Someone even Jack doesn't know about. But first we need to understand exactly what we're dealing with. He pointed to a document on the screen, an internal FBI memo authorizing the surveillance of Rachel Blackwood as a potential national security threat. This is the key, he said. They're not just covering up corruption. They're painting you as the villain, a tech executive selling secrets to foreign governments. That's why they can justify the manhunt. But the evidence clearly shows. Evidence can be manipulated, Michael interrupted, especially by people with the FBI's resources. We need to be smarter than they are. Rachel studied Michael's face, seeing the tactical mind working behind his eyes. What are you thinking? I'm thinking it's time to stop running and start hunting. The soldier in him had fully emerged now, cold and calculating. James Morrison wants a confrontation. Let's give him one, but on our terms, not his. As they prepared to leave the safe house, Rachel realized that her fate now rested entirely in the hands of this former Special Forces operator who had unexpectedly become her protector. And despite the danger, despite the overwhelming odds against them, she felt something she hadn't expected: hope. Because Michael Reynolds was a man who kept his promises. And he had promised to see this through to the end. What neither of them realized was that the end would come sooner and be far more dangerous than either had imagined. Deputy Director James Morrison had just received authorization to deploy a specialized tactical team not to arrest Rachel Blackwood, but to eliminate her and anyone helping her. The evidence she possessed was too damaging to risk a public trial. The hunt had become a kill mission. And somewhere in the mountains of Colorado, two innocent little girls were still the most valuable pawns in a deadly game of betrayal and power. The black SUV cut through the night like a phantom, its headlights off, as Michael navigated the winding mountain roads by moonlight. Beside him, Rachel clutched the evidence bag to her chest like a shield, her eyes constantly scanning the rearview mirror for pursuers. Where are we going? She asked, her voice barely audible over the hum of the engine. Someone I trust, Michael replied, his face illuminated by the dashboard's soft blue glow. Someone even Jack doesn't know about. The cryptic answer didn't satisfy Rachel's analytical mind, but she had learned to trust Michael's judgment. Over the past 48 hours, he had systematically dismantled every obstacle in their path, with the quiet efficiency that came from decades of operational experience. They had left Denver 3 hours ago, abandoning their previous vehicle in an underground parking garage, and acquiring this one through means Rachel chose not to question. Michael had disabled the SUV's tracking systems and replaced its license plates before they departed, precautions that would have seemed paranoid 3 days ago, but now felt woefully inadequate. The mountains loomed around them, massive shadows against the star-filled sky. Rachel had lost track of their location hours ago, each unmarked road and switchback blending into the next until her normally precise mental map had surrendered to confusion. We're being followed, Michael announced suddenly, his voice calm despite the dire implication. Rachel twisted in her seat. I don't see anyone. 3 miles back, helicopter running, dark, military grade from the sound signature. Michael's enhanced senses, honed by years of combat operations, detected threats long before they became visible to civilians. They're using thermal imaging to track us. Fear clutched at Rachel's throat. How do we lose them? Instead of answering, Michael abruptly turned off the road onto what appeared to be a game trail, barely wide enough for the SUV. Branches scraped against the windows as they plunged deeper into the forest, the vehicle bouncing violently over the uneven terrain. Drainage tunnel ahead, Michael explained, pointing to a large concrete pipe that passed beneath an old logging road. It will mask our heat signature long enough to buy us some time. He guided the SUV into the tunnel, the tight fit forcing Rachel to press herself against the door as the vehicle's sides scraped against concrete. Once inside, Michael killed the engine and plunged them into total darkness. "Now we wait," he whispered. In the oppressive silence, Rachel became acutely aware of her own rapid breathing, of the thundering pulse in her ears. But beside her, Michael remained perfectly still, his breathing deep and controlled, a sniper's breath designed to steady both body and mind. Above them, the distinctive whoomp-whoomp of helicopter blades grew steadily louder, then hovered directly overhead. A powerful searchlight swept the forest floor, its beam penetrating the gaps in the forest canopy but unable to reach their concrete shelter. Minutes stretched like hours as they sat in darkness, the helicopter circling above them in an expanding pattern. Finally, the sound began to fade as the aircraft moved on to search another sector. "They'll have ground teams," Michael said softly. "We need to move before they deploy the perimeter." "How do you know all this?" Rachel asked, marveling at his tactical knowledge. "Because it's what I would do." Michael restarted the engine, the sudden noise making Rachel flinch. "And James Morrison has access to the same playbook." They emerged from the tunnel on the opposite side, following the dried creek bed for nearly a mile before rejoining a narrow forest road. Michael drove with practiced precision, using terrain features to mask their movement while maintaining a pace that ate up the miles. "Almost there," he said as they began climbing a particularly steep incline. "Just over this ridge." As they crested the hill, Rachel gasped at the sight before them. Nestled in a small valley protected on three sides by steep cliffs, sat a modest cabin with a metal roof. Solar panels gleamed in the moonlight, and a small wind turbine spun lazily in the mountain breeze. "Welcome to Ghost Station," Michael said, a hint of pride in his voice. "My insurance policy." "What is this place?" "A refuge. Off the grid, off the books. Built it myself after my discharge when the nightmares were at their worst." Michael's expression grew distant. "Elizabeth was the only one who knew about it. After she died, it became my contingency plan. Somewhere the girls and I could disappear to if my past ever caught up with us." The fact that he had brought her to the secret sanctuary, a place he had shared with no one since his wife's death, was not lost on Rachel. This wasn't just operational security, it was a profound act of trust. Michael parked the SUV in a small camouflage garage built into the hillside and led Rachel to the cabin. Inside, the space was Spartan but functional, solar-powered refrigerator, wood stove, communications equipment, and enough supplies to last for weeks. "There's a generator for backup water from a mountain spring and enough firepower to hold off a small army," Michael explained, securing the door behind them. "We should be safe here while we plan our next move." Rachel set her evidence bag on the table, suddenly overcome by exhaustion. The adrenaline that had sustained her for days was fading, leaving behind a bone-deep weariness that made her legs tremble. Michael noticed immediately, guiding her to a chair before she could collapse. "When did you last eat?" Rachel tried to remember. "Yesterday? Maybe." Without another word, Michael moved to the kitchen area and began preparing a simple meal with his stored supplies. Rachel watched through half-closed eyes as he worked with efficient movements, no energy wasted, no motion without purpose. "Military habits die hard," he explained, noticing her observation. "When you've had to cook for your unit on a single burner while hostiles might be closing in, you learn to be efficient." The hot food, a surprisingly tasty stew of canned meat and vegetables, revived Rachel enough to focus on their situation again. While they ate, Michael established a secure connection to Jack, using an encrypted satellite link. "Report," he said simply when Jack's face appeared on the screen. "Girls are secure at the Echo location," Jack confirmed. "No incidents, but your FBI cousin is pulling out all the stops. There's an interstate manhunt for both of you now. Rachel's been labeled a national security threat, and you're wanted for aiding and abetting." Michael's expression remained impassive, but Rachel saw the muscle in his jaw tighten. "Any word from Anna Kelly?" "That's our one piece of good news. She's agreed to meet, but only on her terms. Neutral location, just the evidence first, no direct contact until she verifies it's legitimate." "Smart woman," Michael nodded. "Terms. Drop point at Red Rocks Park tomorrow at noon. Once she confirms the evidence is solid, she'll arrange extraction through her Inspector General channels." Michael considered this. Too exposed. Morrison will have surveillance on all major parks and public spaces. She won't budge on the location. Says it gives her the advantage, too many witnesses for them to try anything. "Or too many potential casualties," Michael countered grimly. But we're running out of options. Set it up, but tell her we do this our way or not at all. After ending the call, Michael turned to Rachel. We'll have to split the evidence. Insurance policy. Rachel watched as he meticulously divided the hard drives and documents into two separate packages, carefully duplicating the most critical files. I don't like this plan, she admitted. Red Rocks is too open, too many variables. Agreed, but we need Kelly's help to make this official. Michael's tactical mind was already mapping contingencies. Morrison can bury evidence and silence witnesses, but he can't stop an inspector general investigation once it gains momentum. Rachel studied his face in the cabin's low light. Despite the danger, despite the weight of responsibility, Michael appeared completely in his element. Crisis and chaos were his natural habitat, the environment where his specialized training became most valuable. You know, she said softly, most people would be falling apart right now. Michael glanced up from his work. Most people haven't had to defuse IEDs while under sniper fire. Does anything frighten you? The question hung in the air between them. Michael set down the evidence bag, his movements suddenly less precise. Plenty, he admitted. Failing the people who depend on me. Not being there when my daughters need me. He paused, his eyes meeting hers. Losing someone else I care about. The unspoken acknowledgement that she had become someone he cared about settled in Rachel's chest like a warm coal. Despite the danger, despite the chaotic circumstances of their meeting, something real had grown between them, a connection forged in crisis, but rooted in mutual respect. We should get some rest, Michael said, breaking the moment. Tomorrow will test us both. He showed her to the cabin's small bedroom, insisting she take the bed while he kept watch. Though exhaustion pulled at her like a physical weight, Rachel found herself hesitating at the doorway. Michael, she said quietly, thank you. Not just for saving my life, but for believing me when no one else would. He nodded, once the simple gesture more meaningful than flowery words could ever be. Your brother saw something worth fighting for in you. So do I. As Rachel drifted into an exhausted sleep, Michael settled into a chair with a clear view of both the door and the windows, his handgun within easy reach. Outside, the mountain night enveloped the cabin in darkness, hiding them from the world that sought to destroy them, at least for now. But even in this remote sanctuary, the game was changing. For at that very moment, in a secure facility outside Washington, D.C., Deputy Director James Morrison was staring at a satellite image of the mountains where they were hiding. His cold eyes narrowed in calculation. Find me anything unusual in this search grid, he ordered the technician beside him. Power usage, heat signatures, communication signals, anything that doesn't belong in wilderness. Yes, sir, the technician replied. But it's a massive area to search without more specific coordinates. Morrison's lips curled into a thin smile. Then perhaps we need to motivate my cousin to reveal himself. He turned to an agent waiting nearby. Implement Protocol Shepherd. Let's see how quickly Michael Reynolds emerges when he thinks his precious daughters are in danger. The agent hesitated. Sir, using children as bait is necessary when national security is at stake, Morrison interrupted coldly. Make it happen. Dawn broke over the mountains with the crystalline clarity unique to high altitudes. Michael had allowed himself only brief periods of tactical rest throughout the night, 20-minute intervals of light sleep followed by thorough perimeter checks. Years of combat operations had trained his body to function on minimal rest when necessary. He was reviewing their route to Red Rocks on a topographical map when Rachel emerged from the bedroom, her hair damp from the solar shower, wearing a set of clean clothes. He had provided cargo pants and a flannel shirt that had once belonged to Elizabeth. Any word from Jack? She asked, accepting the cup of strong coffee he offered. Check-in confirmed the girls are still secure. Michael's voice held the forced steadiness of a man containing his worry. Jack says they're treating it like a camping adventure. Rachel smiled at the thought of the twins maintaining their spirits despite the circumstances. They're resilient, like their father. They've had to be. Michael folded the map precisely, his movements betraying the military precision that emerged when he was under pressure. We depart in 30 minutes. I've plotted 3 alternative routes to the meeting point and 2 separate extraction paths depending on how the exchange goes. Rachel nodded, falling naturally into the role of mission partner rather than civilian protectee. Her own executive experience had taught her the value of clear planning and contingencies. What do you need me to do? She asked, her voice matching his professional tone. Memorize this. Michael handed her a small card with coordinates and code phrases. If we get separated, make your way to these rally points in sequence. Jack will monitor them on a rotating schedule. As they prepared to depart, Michael suddenly paused, his head tilting slightly, as if listening to something beyond Rachel's range of hearing. His body tensed, hand moving automatically to the weapon at his hip. "What is it?" Rachel whispered, recognizing the change in his demeanor. "Aircraft. Coming this way." Michael moved swiftly to the window, peering through a narrow gap in the camouflage blinds. Two helicopters, military grade. Same ones from last night. Rachel's heart pounded. How did they find us? They didn't yet. They're doing a grid search of the entire region. Michael's mind calculated rapidly. We need to move now. If we wait for the scheduled departure, we'll be caught in their search pattern. Within minutes, they had loaded the essential equipment and evidence into the SUV. Michael activated a series of switches near the cabin door, and Rachel was startled by the soft hum of machinery. "Thermal countermeasures," he explained, "will make the cabin appear cold on infrared even after we've left. Buys us some time." They slipped into the vehicle and Michael guided it down a nearly invisible track that led away from the cabin in the opposite direction from their arrival path. Rachel clutched the evidence bag to her chest, her eyes constantly scanning the sky for the approaching helicopters. "Stay below the tree line," Michael muttered, more to himself than to her, as he navigated the difficult terrain. "Use the ridges for cover." They had traveled perhaps 2 miles when Michael's satellite phone buzzed the emergency channel connected to Jack. Michael answered immediately, putting it on speaker. "Talk to me." Jack's voice was tight with controlled urgency. "Mike, we've got a situation. I just intercepted a law enforcement bulletin. They're claiming to have the girls in protective custody." Michael's knuckles went white on the steering wheel. "That's impossible. You're with them right now." "That's just it, I am. They're literally playing cards across from me as we speak." "This is a ploy, Mike." Rachel watched as Michael's expression transformed, fury flickering behind his eyes, before being ruthlessly suppressed by training and discipline. "They're trying to flush us out." "There's more," Jack continued grimly. "The bulletin specifically mentions a child protective services facility in Boulder. They want you to think that's where the girls are being held." "It's a trap," Michael concluded, his voice dangerously calm. "Obviously, but it's also an opportunity. They don't know that we know the girls are safe. They're expecting you to react emotionally, to rush in half-cocked." Michael's tactical mind was already processing the implications. "Which means they'll commit resources to the Boulder location. Draw forces away from Red Rocks." "Exactly, but Mike, be careful. If they're willing to use your daughters as bait, even falsely, they've crossed a line." Michael's voice was cold steel. "Thank you for the update. Maintain current security protocols with the girls." After ending the call, Michael drove in silence for several minutes, his expression unreadable. Rachel could almost see the strategic calculations happening behind his eyes. "We're changing the plan," he finally announced. "Morrison expects me to abandon the mission and rush to Boulder. That tells me he's desperate to prevent the evidence handoff. So we proceed with the exchange?" Michael nodded, "but with modifications. Morrison just revealed his greatest weakness. He underestimates you. He thinks without me, you'll be helpless, easy to capture." "He doesn't know I survived boardroom politics for 15 years, Rachel replied with a grim smile. "Exactly. So here's what we're going to do." Michael outlined a new plan, one that would use Morrison's expectations against him. Rather than approaching Red Rocks together, they would separate. Rachel would make the exchange with Anna Kelly, while Michael created a diversion that would draw attention away from the meeting. "It's risky," Rachel observed. "We're stronger together." "Sometimes the best defense is to split the target," Michael countered. "Morrison wants both you and the evidence. By separating them, we force him to divide his resources." The logic was sound, but Rachel felt a growing unease. "And after the exchange, how do we reconnect?" "Rally Point Charlie, the old mining museum outside Golden." Michael's confidence was absolute. 1 hour after the exchange, with or without Kelly. They stopped at a small roadside diner to finalize the details of their plan, choosing the public location to blend in with the morning crowd of hikers and tourists. Over plates of eggs and coffee they would barely touch. They reviewed the approach to Red Rocks, identifying potential surveillance points and escape routes. Michael was in the middle of explaining the optimal path through the park's eastern trails when Rachel's burner phone, the one Jack had provided, buzzed with an incoming text message. Her blood turned to ice as she read it. "Michael," she whispered, sliding the phone across the table. The message was from an unknown number. "Patricia Hoffman found dead in her Seattle apartment. Apparent suicide. Meeting compromised. Do not proceed." Michael studied the message, his expression revealing nothing. "Could be legitimate," he said quietly. "Could also be another attempt to derail the exchange." "Patricia dead," Rachel's voice cracked. Despite the lawyer's recent betrayal, she had been a friend and mentor for many years. "They're killing everyone connected to this case, which is why we need to get the evidence to Kelly more than ever." Michael's resolve was unwavering. If the meeting is compromised, we adjust the approach, not the objective. But as he spoke, Rachel noticed something that sent a chill down her spine. Through the diner's front window, she could see two men in suits examining the parked vehicles in the lot. Their methodical movements and communication earpieces marked them clearly as federal agents. "Michael," she said softly, keeping her expression neutral. 2 o'clock. Parking lot." Michael didn't turn to look. Instead, he casually reached for the coffee pot on their table, using the reflective surface to observe the men outside. "FBI, Morrison's people, we need to leave now." He placed cash on the table and they rose casually, moving toward the diner's rear exit as if heading to the restrooms. The kitchen staff barely glanced at them as they slipped through the back door into the employee parking area. "They're checking registrations," Michael muttered, "looking for stolen vehicles or rentals paid with cash. Will they find ours?" "Eventually, which means we need a new ride." Michael surveyed the small lot, his eyes settling on an older pickup truck with mud-splattered Colorado plates. "That one. Keys will be under the floor mat or in the visor. Rural habit." Rachel watched in astonishment as Michael approached the truck, checked for witnesses, then slipped inside with practiced ease. Within seconds, the engine rumbled to life. He gestured for her to join him, and they pulled away just as shouts erupted from the front of the diner. "I'm sorry about your friend," Michael said, as they accelerated onto the highway, his eyes constantly checking the mirrors for pursuit. "Patricia Hoffman deserved better than that." Rachel nodded, grief and anger warring within her. "They're eliminating loose ends. Anyone who might corroborate my story." Which means Morrison is getting desperate. He knows if the evidence reaches the right hands, his entire operation collapses. Michael's tactical assessment was coldly practical. Desperate men make mistakes. They drove in tense silence for several miles, taking a circuitous route toward Red Rocks that avoided major highways and traffic cameras. The new plan called for them to separate at a trailhead 2 miles from the actual meeting point, with Michael creating a diversion at the park's main entrance, while Rachel approached Kelly from the less monitored eastern path. As they neared the separation point, Rachel felt a growing sense of dread. Something about this didn't feel right. Instincts honed in corporate power struggles, warning her of impending betrayal. "Michael," she said as he pulled the truck onto a Forest Service road, "what if this is exactly what Morrison wants to separate us?" Michael considered her concern, his expression thoughtful. "It's possible. But he doesn't know about our communication protocols or rally points. Even separated, we maintain tactical advantage through coordination." He parked the truck in a small clearing and retrieved a backpack from behind the seat. From it, he produced a handheld radio, a small caliber pistol, and a satellite beacon. "Take these," he said, showing her how to operate each item. The radio has a 5-mile range encrypted channel. The beacon is for absolute emergencies, only activating it will bring in Jack and his team, but also alert every law enforcement agency in a 50-mile radius. Rachel accepted the equipment, trying to project more confidence than she felt. And the gun, last resort only, aim shots, center mass, no hesitation. Michael's instruction was concise and practical. But your best weapon is your mind. Stay alert, trust your instincts, and remember, no matter what happens, make it to the rally point. Before they parted, Michael clasped her hand firmly. The gesture wasn't romantic or sentimental. It was the grip of a soldier to a comrade before a mission. "Your brother would be proud of you," he said simply. "Now let's finish what you started." Rachel watched him disappear into the trees, moving with the quiet efficiency that had kept him alive through countless combat operations. She waited until he was out of sight before checking her watch and beginning her own approach to the meeting point. The Red Rocks Park was busy with the usual crowd of tourists and hikers providing excellent cover, but also complicating security. Rachel moved with purpose, a hiking pack on her back containing the evidence, trying to blend with the recreational visitors while maintaining situational awareness. She spotted the designated meeting point, a small overlook with a spectacular view of the famous rock formations, and conducted a careful scan for surveillance or threats. Two couples taking photos, a family with young children, an older man sketching the landscape, nothing that triggered immediate concern. According to the arrangement, Kelly would be wearing a red baseball cap and carrying a geology guidebook. Rachel was to sit on the eastern bench and pretend to consult a trail map until Kelly approached. She had just taken her position when the radio in her pocket crackled softly. Michael's voice came through terse and professional. Falcon in position, possible hostiles at main entrance. Proceed with caution. Rachel acknowledged with a single click of the transmit button, their prearranged signal for message received, continuing mission. 5 minutes passed, then 10. Rachel maintained her cover periodically, consulting her map while scanning her surroundings. The families came and went, replaced by new visitors, but no one matching Kelly's description appeared. At the 15-minute mark, Rachel's instincts were screaming that something was wrong. She keyed the radio. No contact at primary, possible compromise. Michael's response was immediate. Withdraw to secondary, possible ambush in progress. Rachel rose casually, folding her map as if she had decided on her route. She had taken 3 steps toward the exit path when she spotted her, a woman in her 40s with short gray streaked hair, wearing the promised red baseball cap and carrying a geology book. The woman made eye contact briefly, then gave an almost imperceptible nod toward a less trafficked side trail. Rachel understood the message and changed course, maintaining a tourist's casual pace while her heart raced. The side trail curved behind a massive red rock formation, providing a moment of privacy away from the main overlook. The woman was waiting there, her posture tense but controlled. "Ms. Blackwood," she said without preamble, "I'm Anna Kelly. We have approximately 2 minutes before my presence here is noted by the surveillance team at the visitor center." Rachel assessed the woman quickly. Her no-nonsense demeanor and alert eyes spoke of a professional background consistent with her JAG and Inspector General credentials. "The evidence?" Rachel said, reaching into her pack. "Not here," Kelly interrupted. "Too exposed. There's a coffee shop in Morrison, the town, not the director," she added with a grim smile. "The Java Hut. 1 hour, come alone." Before Rachel could protest, Kelly continued, "Your escort has been compromised. There's a team tracking his movements separately from the ones following you." Rachel felt her blood go cold. "How do you know that?" "Because I've seen the operational brief. Morrison is running this like a military operation, separate teams targeting each of you with orders to capture you alive, but with authorization to use lethal force on Reynolds." "I need to warn him," Rachel said, already reaching for the radio. "Not on that channel. It's been compromised since you entered the park perimeter." Kelly's expression was sympathetic but urgent. "Listen carefully. Morrison doesn't just want the evidence, he wants Reynolds eliminated. There's history there you don't know about." "What history?" Kelly checked her watch. "No time. Java Hut, 1 hour. I'll tell you everything then." She started to leave, then turned back. "And Ms. Blackwood, if you wanted to save Michael Reynolds' life, keep him away from Boulder. That's where the kill team is waiting." Before Rachel could respond, Kelly disappeared around the rock formation, blending seamlessly with a group of tourists heading toward the main trail. Rachel stood frozen, her mind racing to process this new information. The radio channel compromised, Michael being tracked separately, a kill team in Boulder. She needed to warn him, but how? Their entire communication protocol was potentially exposed. The rally point might be compromised as well. Making a swift decision, Rachel abandoned the planned exit route and instead headed deeper into the park, away from both the overlook and the main entrance, where Michael was creating his diversion. She needed to circle around, approach the rally point from an unexpected direction, and hope she reached it before Michael. As she hiked rapidly through the less traveled sections of the park, Rachel's satellite phone vibrated with an incoming message. It was from Jack, sent through their secure emergency channel. "Urgent trap confirmed. M team targeting both rally points. New extraction coordinates follow." Rachel memorized the new location, an abandoned gas station 20 miles east of their original rally point, and deleted the message. Jack was adapting to the situation, creating a new exfiltration plan on the fly. But Michael didn't have this information. He was still operating according to the original plan, potentially heading into an ambush. Rachel quickened her pace, pushing through fatigue and fear. The rough terrain slowed her progress, and every passing minute increased the danger to Michael. She had almost reached the park boundary when she heard the distinctive crack of gunfire echoing across the valley. Her blood turned to ice. The shots had come from the direction of the main entrance, where Michael was supposed to be creating his diversion. Acting on instinct rather than plan, Rachel activated the satellite beacon Michael had given her. The small device would summon help, but also announce her position to anyone monitoring the emergency frequencies. It was a calculated risk, but if Michael was under fire, they needed Jack's team now, not later. She was plotting the fastest route to the entrance when her radio crackled to life. "Rachel!" Michael's voice was strained, his breathing labored. "Ambush. Don't go to rally point. Compromised." "Michael." Rachel pressed the transmit button. "Where are you? What's happening?" Static answered her then. "Trap. Morrison knew. Get to Jack." The transmission cut off abruptly, leaving only empty static in its wake. Rachel stood paralyzed with indecision. Every fiber of her being wanted to run toward the gunfire to help Michael. But he had given clear instructions. Don't go to the rally point, get to Jack. The tactical logic was sound. If Morrison's team had ambushed Michael, rushing to his location would only give them a second target. The mission securing the evidence had to take priority. With a wrenching feeling in her chest, Rachel turned away from the sound of conflict and began making her way toward the new extraction coordinates Jack had provided. Each step felt like a betrayal of the man who had risked everything to protect her, but she forced herself to continue clutching the evidence bag that contained their only hope of exposing the conspiracy. What she couldn't know, was that the transmission she'd received hadn't come from Michael at all. 20 miles away in a nondescript van filled with surveillance equipment, one of Morrison's technical specialists was removing a voice modulation headset, nodding with satisfaction at his superior. "She bought it," the technician reported. "Tracking beacon activated as predicted. She's moving northeast away from Reynolds' actual position." Deputy Director Morrison smiled coldly. "Divide and conquer, the oldest strategy in warfare." He turned to the tactical team leader beside him. "She's heading straight for our secondary intercept team, and with her separated from Reynolds, we can proceed with Protocol Dagger." Sir," the team leader acknowledged, pressing his communications earpiece. "Dagger team, you have authorization. Target is isolated at Red Rock's main entrance. Weapons free." In the command vehicle, Morrison studied the satellite imagery showing heat signatures converging on Michael's position. "My cousin always was too noble for his own good," he remarked to no one in particular. "Such a waste of operational talent." Rachel pushed herself to the limits of endurance, moving through rough terrain while avoiding roads and open areas where she might be spotted. The abandoned gas station was still 10 miles away, at least 3 hours on foot through the difficult landscape. Her mind raced with worry for Michael. The gunfire, the abrupt end to his transmission, the warning about a trap, all pointed to a dire situation. Had she abandoned him when he needed her most? Or was she fulfilling her part of the mission as he would expect? 2 miles into her journey, Rachel paused in the shelter of a rocky outcropping to catch her breath and check her bearings. As she consulted the small GPS unit Jack had provided, a flicker of movement in the valley below caught her attention. A black SUV was moving slowly along a service road, its progress deliberate and searching. Even from this distance, Rachel recognized the methodical pattern of a search operation. They were hunting for her. She pressed herself deeper into the shadows of the rocks, mind working furiously. If Morrison's team was searching this area, they must have anticipated her route to the extraction point, which meant either the new coordinates were compromised or they had enough personnel to cover all possible escape routes. Neither option was encouraging. Rachel considered her alternatives. Continuing to the gas station might lead her directly into a trap. Returning to Red Rocks would likely mean capture or worse. She needed a third option, something unexpected that would bypass Morrison's carefully laid net. The answer came to her suddenly, a fragment of conversation from their planning session. Michael had mentioned an emergency fallback location, a hunting cabin owned by a former teammate, someone not connected to Jack or any of their known associates. Rachel had memorized the coordinates as part of their contingency planning, never expecting to need them. The cabin was further away, at least 20 miles to the northwest, but if Morrison didn't know about it, it represented her best chance of evading capture while finding a way to help Michael. Decision made, Rachel altered her course using the rocky terrain to mask her movement from the searching vehicles below. The new route would be physically demanding, requiring her to cross two mountain ridges before nightfall, but desperation lent her strength she didn't know she possessed. As the afternoon wore on, the distant sound of helicopter rotors periodically echoed through the valleys, confirming that the search for her was intensifying. Rachel pushed herself harder, ignoring the protests of muscles unaccustomed to such punishment, focusing on putting one foot in front of the other. By sunset, she had crossed the first ridge and found temporary shelter in a dense stand of pines overlooking a small mountain lake. Exhaustion threatened to overwhelm her, but the thought of Michael possibly injured or captured kept her from succumbing to fatigue. As darkness settled over the mountains, Rachel activated the satellite phone for the first time since receiving Jack's message. The risk of signal detection was real, but she needed information about Michael's status. The phone connected after several tense seconds, and Jack's voice came through terse and controlled. "Identify." "Blackwood," Rachel responded, using the code they had established. "Status on Falcon." There was a pause that stretched Rachel's nerves to the breaking point. Then "Unknown. Lost contact at Red Rocks. Extraction team found signs of firefight blood evidence, but no body." The words hit Rachel like physical blows. Firefight, blood, no body. "The girls?" she managed to ask, her voice barely steady. "Secure," Jack confirmed. "But surveillance indicates massive resources deployed in search operations throughout the region. All pre-established extraction points are compromised. Morrison has leveraged full federal assets, satellite coverage, air support, ground teams." "He's desperate," Rachel concluded. "The evidence must be even more damaging than we realized." "Where are you?" Jack asked, his voice dropping to an urgent whisper. Rachel hesitated. Operational security dictated that she reveal her location to no one, not even Jack. Michael's training had been explicit on this point in a scenario where communication might be compromised. Assume all channels are monitored. "Implementing Broken Arrow Protocol," she said instead, using the emergency code Michael had taught her. "We'll contact when secure." "Rachel, wait," Jack began, but she had already terminated the connection, removing the battery from the phone for good measure. Alone in the gathering darkness, Rachel allowed herself a moment of pure despair. Michael was missing, possibly wounded or captured. Their communication network was compromised. Morrison had mobilized the full resources of federal law enforcement to hunt them down. And yet the evidence in her possession could end it all if she could get it into the right hands. Rachel closed her eyes, trying to think as Michael would. Tactical assessment, resource inventory, objective identification. The analytical framework he had taught her over the past 3 days. She had the evidence: a compass, limited food and water, a small caliber pistol with minimal ammunition, and a survival kit Michael had insisted she carry. Her physical condition was deteriorating due to fatigue and stress, but she remained mobile and uninjured. The objective was clear: reach the emergency fallback location, attempt to re-establish contact with Jack through secure means, and determine Michael's status. With renewed determination, Rachel checked her compass and prepared to continue her journey through the night. The mountain terrain was treacherous in darkness, but the clear sky and full moon provided just enough illumination to make progress possible. As she gathered her meager supplies, a sharp crack echoed through the trees. Behind her, the unmistakable sound of a branch breaking under human weight. Rachel froze, heart pounding. Someone was approaching her position. With practiced silence, another skill Michael had insisted she learn, Rachel retreated deeper into the pine thicket, drawing the pistol and bracing it against a tree trunk to steady her aim. The approaching footsteps were careful but detectable to her now heightened senses, moving with deliberate purpose rather than the random pattern of a hiker. A shadow detached itself from the darkness, moving toward the spot where she had been resting moments before. The figure was tall, masculine, moving with a slight limp, but maintaining the alert posture of a trained operative. Rachel's finger tensed on the trigger, her breathing controlled just as Michael had taught her. The figure came closer, features still indistinct in the moonlight filtering through the trees. Then a familiar voice, low and strained. Rachel, it's me. The pistol nearly fell from her suddenly numb fingers. Michael. The figure turned toward her hiding place, and even in the dim light she could make out his features drawn with pain, but unmistakably Michael Reynolds. Rachel emerged from concealment, disbelief and joy warring within her. How did you find me? The radio said you were ambushed. Radio was compromised. Michael confirmed, grimacing as he lowered himself to a fallen log. They used voice modulation to send false messages, tried to separate us. Now that he was closer, Rachel could see the dark stains spreading across his left side, the improvised bandage barely containing the bleeding. You're hurt. Caught a ricochet. Through and through, nothing vital. His assessment was clinical, detached from the obvious pain the wound was causing him. More importantly, Morrison's people have the rally point staked out. Would have walked right into a kill zone if Jack hadn't warned me. Rachel knelt beside him, examining the wound with gentle fingers. How did you find me? I didn't follow the extraction plan. A ghost of a smile touched Michael's lips. You went to the emergency fallback location, exactly what I trained you to do. I just had to get here first and wait. Pride warmed his voice despite his condition. You're a quick study, Rachel Blackwood. The compliment, delivered through obvious pain, touched Rachel more deeply than any flowery praise could have. But concern quickly overshadowed her emotions as she noted the pallor of his skin, the slight tremor in his hands. You need medical attention, she said firmly. What I need is to complete the mission. Michael's resolve was undiminished despite his injury. Morrison showed his hand today. The ambush at Red Rocks wasn't just about capturing us, it was an elimination operation. He brought in a tactical team with kill authorization. Kelly told me there was history between you two, Rachel said, helping Michael into a more comfortable position against a tree trunk. Something I didn't know about. Michael was silent for a long moment, his eyes distant. James Morrison and I served together early in my career. Balkan's peacekeeping operation 1999. He was an intelligence officer attached to our unit. Rachel listened intently, sensing they were approaching the heart of the conspiracy. There was an incident, a village caught between opposing forces. Intel suggested weapons were being stockpiled there. Morrison ordered a raid. Michael's voice had taken on the flat, detached quality soldiers often used when recounting painful memories. We found no weapons, just civilians. But Morrison, he couldn't accept being wrong. What happened? Rachel asked softly. He planted evidence, brought in weapons from another location, photographed them as if they'd been discovered during the raid. Filed a report justifying our actions. Michael's jaw tightened. When I confronted him, he said it was for the greater good, maintaining operational credibility. You reported him, Rachel guessed. Michael nodded once, to the commanding officer. Investigation was launched, but Morrison had connections. Case was buried, he was transferred to FBI rather than facing charges. I was encouraged to accept a transfer to Special Forces. And he's never forgotten that you tried to expose him. Rachel concluded, the pieces fitting together. This isn't just about the current conspiracy, it's personal for him. James Morrison has spent 20 years climbing the ranks, building his network, positioning himself for eventual directorship, Michael confirmed. The technology your company developed and that David sold gave him unprecedented access to surveillance capabilities outside normal oversight channels. The perfect tool for a man with authoritarian tendencies and a grudge, Rachel said grimly. Exactly. And now we have evidence that could end not just this operation, but his entire career. Michael winced as he shifted position, which is why he's thrown everything he has at stopping us. Rachel checked his bandage, concerned by the amount of blood that had seeped through. We need to get you to the cabin. Can you walk? I've marched 30 miles with worse, Michael replied, though his ashen complexion belied the confidence in his voice. Just need a hand up. Rachel supported him as he rose, taking more of his weight than he would likely admit needing. Together, they began the slow journey toward the emergency fallback location, each step clearly causing Michael pain that he refused to acknowledge. The evidence, he asked after they had covered several hundred yards. Secure, Rachel assured him, patting the waterproof bag still strapped across her body. Everything we need to expose Morrison and his entire network. Michael nodded, satisfied. Once we reach the cabin, we'll need to establish secure communication with Jack. Get the girls to absolute safety before we make our next move. And what is our next move? Rachel asked, adjusting her grip to better support him over the uneven terrain. We take the fight to Morrison. Michael said, his voice hardening despite his weakened condition. He crossed every line when he targeted my daughters, even as a bluff. No more defensive operations. It's time to end this. The determination in his voice was undiminished by his injury, the warrior spirit that had carried him through countless battles still burning bright. But Rachel couldn't ignore the reality of their situation. Michael wounded, their resources limited, and the full might of corrupted federal agencies arrayed against them. We're outgunned and outnumbered, she observed pragmatically. Wouldn't be the first time. The ghost of a smile touched Michael's lips. Besides, we have two advantages Morrison doesn't. What's that? You, Michael said simply. He consistently underestimates you, sees you as a civilian liability rather than an asset. The confidence in his assessment warmed Rachel unexpectedly. And the second advantage, Michael's expression hardened, the seasoned warrior emerging despite his physical weakness. He thinks he's hunting us. He hasn't realized yet that we're hunting him. As they continued their painful progress through the darkness, Rachel found herself drawing strength from Michael's unwavering resolve. Despite everything, the betrayal, the danger, his own injury, he remained focused on the mission, on protecting his daughters, on seeing justice done. It was that same uncompromising integrity that had led him to report Morrison 20 years ago, regardless of the professional consequences. The same moral compass that had guided him to help her when she appeared wounded and desperate on his land. What neither of them yet realized was that their journey through the mountains was being tracked by more than just Morrison's teams. A separate entity, one with its own agenda, in this unfolding drama, had been monitoring their communications and movements with growing interest. In a secure facility thousands of miles away, analysts were watching heat signatures move slowly through the Colorado wilderness, listening to encrypted transmissions, and preparing to introduce a new variable into an already volatile equation. For the conspiracy Rachel had uncovered reached beyond Morrison, beyond the FBI, into realms of national security neither she nor Michael had yet comprehended. And as dawn approached, bringing them closer to their temporary sanctuary, forces were aligning that would transform their personal struggle into something far more dangerous and far more consequential. The abandoned hunting cabin appeared before them just as the first light of dawn began to illuminate the eastern sky. It was smaller than Michael's ghost station, little more than a one-room structure with a small porch, but its isolated location made it ideal for their purposes. Jack's teammate owns this, Rachel asked as they approached cautiously, Michael scanning the surroundings despite his weakened condition. Carlos Mendez, former combat medic, saved my life in Kandahar. Michael's voice was growing weaker, the long night's journey having taken its toll. Keeps it stocked with supplies, including medical equipment. The cabin was secure, showing no signs of disturbance when they carefully checked the perimeter. Inside, Michael directed Rachel to a hidden compartment high beneath the floorboards, where she found an impressive array of emergency supplies, including a comprehensive medical kit. Shirt off, Rachel ordered once she had assembled the necessary items. Her tone brooked no argument, executive authority replacing her earlier deference to his tactical expertise. Michael complied with a grimace, revealing the full extent of his injury. The bullet had torn through his side, leaving a ragged exit wound that had been bleeding steadily for hours. Rachel cleaned and dressed the wound with careful precision, following the instructions in the emergency medical guide she found in the kit. Not bad, Michael observed as she finished securing the bandage. Mendez would approve. You've lost too much blood. Rachel countered, noting his pallor and the slight tremor in his hands. You need real medical attention, not field dressings. Later, Michael's focus remained unwavering. First, we need to establish secure communication with Jack and verify the girls are still safe. The cabin's emergency supplies included a hand-cranked radio with military-grade encryption technology Rachel recognized as similar to systems her own company had developed for Special Forces operations. Michael walked her through the complex process of establishing a secure connection, his instructions precise despite his weakened condition. After several tense minutes, Jack's voice crackled through the static. About damn time, Jack said, relief evident beneath his gruff exterior. Status: operational with limitations, Michael replied, using the coded phrase to indicate he was injured but functional. Package secure, location secure, Girls, relocated to ultimate fallback. Elena has them. Jack's mention of his sister, a detail they had deliberately omitted from previous communications, in case of compromise, confirmed the channel was truly secure. Morrison's resources expanded. He's leveraged a national security directive claiming Rachel has classified technology. Full satellite coverage, air assets, multiple ground teams. They're conducting a systematic grid search of the entire region. Michael processed this information with the calm assessment of a veteran operator. Timeline. At current search patterns, they'll reach your AO within 36 hours. Jack's voice was grim. But there's a complication. Intelligence chatter indicates a third party has entered the equation. Michael's eyes narrowed. Definition of third party. Unknown but sophisticated. Intercepted communications suggest non-domestic operators tracking the same target, presumably you and Rachel. The implications settled heavily in the small cabin. If foreign intelligence services were now involved, the situation had escalated beyond even their worst projections. Extraction options, Michael asked, his tactical mind already calculating alternatives. Limited, all conventional routes are monitored, but I might have an unconventional solution. Jack's voice lowered as if he might be overheard despite the encrypted channel. Anna Kelly reached out through secure channels. Says she can provide extraction and protection if you bring the evidence directly to her. Michael and Rachel exchanged glances, both remembering their earlier encounter with Kelly at Red Rocks. Verification, Michael asked. She provided details about your service record that aren't in public documents, things only someone with high-level clearance would know. Jack paused. She also says to tell you that Sarajevo was never about weapons. Michael's expression changed subtly, a flicker of surprise quickly controlled. When and where? Boulder, Federal Building, noon tomorrow. The location immediately triggered Michael's suspicion. Boulder was the site of Morrison's fake child custody trap. Kelly says that's why it works. Morrison has already searched the location thoroughly. It's the last place he'd expect you to appear. The logic was sound if audacious, but something about the plan didn't sit right with Rachel. It seems too convenient, she said after Michael had ended the communication. Kelly appears, offers extraction, and wants us to walk into a federal building in the same city where Morrison set his trap. Michael nodded, her skepticism mirroring his own. It could be legitimate. Kelly's reference to Sarajevo suggests she knows about my history with Morrison, details that aren't in official records. Or Morrison told her what to say knowing it would convince you. Rachel's corporate experience with betrayal had made her wary of convenient solutions. Michael leaned back against the cabin wall, fatigue evident in his features, despite his attempt to mask it. Either way, we're running out of options. Morrison's search grid is tightening. We have unidentified foreign operators in the mix, and my condition. He gestured to his bandaged side. I'm operational, but compromised. The admission clearly cost him. Rachel had seen enough of Michael Reynolds to know that acknowledging any weakness went against his fundamental nature. So what do we do? She asked softly. Michael was silent for a long moment, his tactical mind weighing variables and calculating risks. We split the evidence again, he finally said. Half goes with you to a separate location. I take the other half to meet Kelly. No, Rachel's refusal was immediate and firm. You're injured. If it's a trap, then one of us still gets through, Michael interrupted, his logic implacable. The mission succeeds even if one of us fails. There has to be another way, Rachel insisted, one that doesn't involve sacrificing yourself. Michael's expression softened slightly. It's not a sacrifice, Rachel. It's a tactical distribution of assets, the same strategy that's kept the girls safe throughout this operation. Before Rachel could respond, a sound outside the cabin froze them both, the distinctive crunch of footsteps on the gravel path leading to the door. Michael was on his feet, instantly ignoring the pain from his wound as he moved to a defensive position, signaling Rachel to take cover behind the cabin's small kitchen counter. His hand and gun appeared in his grip, aimed steadily at the door despite his weakened condition. The footsteps stopped just outside. Then a voice called, softly, Michael Reynolds. My name is Agent David Chen, Inspector General's office. I'm here on behalf of Anna Kelly. Michael and Rachel exchanged glances, silent communication passing between them. This was either the extraction they needed or the trap they feared. I'm unarmed, the voice continued. I have identification. Anna Kelly sent me with a message. The Sarajevo report was filed by Captain Thomas Blackwood. The addition of Rachel's brother to the verification code changed something in Michael's expression. He lowered his weapon slightly, though remained in a defensive stance. "Approach slowly," he called, hands visible. The door opened with deliberate slowness, revealing a young Asian American man in civilian clothes, his empty hands held carefully away from his body. His expression was professionally neutral, but his eyes widened slightly at the sight of Michael's wound. "Medical attention was part of the extraction plan," he said, maintaining his position in the doorway. "There's a team standing by." "Verification first," Michael replied, his weapon still at the ready. "How did you find this location?" "We didn't. We found Jack Murdoch. He provided coordinates after Agent Kelly convinced him of our legitimacy." Chen's calm demeanor never wavered. "Deputy Director Morrison has been placed under investigation following evidence provided by Patricia Hoffman before her death." "Patricia provided evidence." Rachel stepped forward, hope and suspicion warring within her. Chen nodded. "She contacted the Inspector General's office 3 days ago, claiming Morrison had coerced her into providing false information about you. She turned over documentation of threats against her family and recordings of conversations with Morrison. And then conveniently died of suicide." Michael noted skeptically. "Her death is being investigated as a homicide," Chen corrected. "Initial forensics contradicted the suicide staging. Morrison is now considered a person of interest in her murder, but he doesn't know that yet. We've been building a case quietly while maintaining the appearance that the manhunt for you continues under his direction." The explanation was detailed and plausible, but Michael's expression remained guarded. "Why not simply arrest Morrison if you have evidence against him?" "Because Patricia's evidence was compelling but incomplete," Chen replied. "It established coercion and threatening behavior, but not the full extent of the conspiracy or the national security implications. For that, we need what you have." He gestured to the evidence bag Rachel still carried. "And we need it before Morrison realizes his position is compromised and destroys the remaining evidence under his control." Michael and Rachel exchanged glances, again a silent debate passing between them. The verification codes were legitimate. The explanation made tactical sense. But after days of pursuit and betrayal, trust came difficultly. "If this is genuine," Michael said finally, "then you understand our caution. We'll need more than words." Chen nodded, reaching slowly into his jacket pocket to withdraw a small device. "Secure video connection to Anna Kelly. She's standing by to address any concerns." The device projected a small holographic display technology Rachel recognized as classified military development, not yet available in civilian sectors. The image showed Anna Kelly in what appeared to be a secure operations room surrounded by analysts and equipment. "Mr. Reynolds, Ms. Blackwood," Kelly began without preamble. "I understand your skepticism, but time is critical. Morrison has activated a specialized team codenamed Dagger, former Black operations personnel, with explicit termination orders. They're converging on your region as we speak." "Convenient timing," Michael observed, still unconvinced. Kelly's expression hardened. "Thomas Blackwood saved my life in Sarajevo, Mr. Reynolds. He pulled me out of a burning vehicle after a roadside bomb, much like you did for him in Kunar province years later. He was my friend. And when he died, he made me promise to look out for his sister if she ever needed help." The personal connection struck Rachel forcefully. Thomas had never mentioned Kelly, but then much of his military service remained classified even to family. "He never told me about you," Rachel said softly. "Because our connection was through classified operations," Kelly confirmed. "But he spoke of you often. Said you were the smartest person he had ever known and the most stubborn." The accurate characterization of her brother's typical assessment brought tears to Rachel's eyes. Thomas had indeed often called her brilliant but bull-headed, a private joke between siblings that wouldn't be in any official record. Michael noticed her reaction and made a decision. Extraction parameters. Kelly outlined a plan that involved immediate medical evacuation for Michael, secure transport for Rachel, and a rendezvous at a classified facility where the evidence would be presented to a joint task force from the Inspector General's office and select trusted FBI personnel. The girls, Michael asked his primary concern unchanged despite everything else. "Already being relocated to the same secure facility," Kelly assured him. Jack Murdoch insisted on accompanying them personally. They'll be waiting for you when you arrive. The mention of the girls seemed to finalize Michael's decision. He lowered his weapon completely, though Rachel noticed he kept it within easy reach. We accept your extraction, he said formally, but the evidence remains with us until we reach the secure facility and verify the girls' safety ourselves. Kelly nodded, accepting the condition without argument. Agent Chen will coordinate your immediate evacuation. Medical team is standing by 2 miles south of your position, beyond the range of Morrison's search grid. As the connection ended and Chen began relaying extraction coordinates, Rachel moved to Michael's side, supporting him as fatigue and blood loss finally began to overcome even his formidable willpower. You believe her, she said quietly. I believe Thomas Blackwood would have had contingency plans to protect his sister. Michael replied, his voice strained but certain, and I believe in finishing the mission. Rachel helped him gather their essential equipment as Chen coordinated with the extraction team outside. The prospect of safety of finally ending the nightmare pursuit was almost too overwhelming to process. But as they prepared to leave the cabin that had briefly sheltered them, Rachel couldn't shake a lingering sense of unease. They were placing their lives and the fate of Michael's daughters in the hands of people they barely knew based on codes and connections that could be fabricated. Trust but verify, Michael murmured, seeming to read her thoughts. We maintain control of the evidence, keep our weapons, and stay alert until we see the girls. Operational security until mission complete. His unwavering focus, even through injury and exhaustion, steadied Rachel's resolve. Together, they stepped out of the cabin into the bright mountain morning, ready to face whatever awaited them, rescue or betrayal, safety, or a final confrontation. What they couldn't know was that their decision had set in motion events far beyond the conspiracy they had uncovered. For the third party Jack had mentioned, the foreign intelligence operatives tracking their movement had just intercepted the extraction communication and was already moving to intercept. The true nature of the technology stolen from Rachel's company and its implications for global security was about to be revealed. And Deputy Director James Morrison, now aware that his position was compromised, had made a decision of his own. If he was going down, he would ensure Michael Reynolds and Rachel Blackwood didn't live to testify against him. The endgame had begun with Michael's daughters, the evidence, and their very lives hanging in the balance. But as they moved carefully through the mountain forest toward the extraction point, neither Michael nor Rachel realized that their greatest test still lay ahead, a final confrontation that would require every ounce of Michael's tactical skill and Rachel's strategic brilliance to survive. The medical evacuation helicopter descended into a small clearing 2 miles south of the cabin, its rotors whipping the pine branches into a frenzy. Michael stood at the edge of the tree line, one arm around Rachel for support, the other gripping his sidearm despite Agent Chen's assurances. 20 years in special operations had taught him never to fully trust anyone during an extraction, especially not with his daughter's safety at stake. Remember, Michael said quietly, his lips close to Rachel's ear, to be heard over the approaching helicopter. We maintain control of the evidence until we see the girls. First sign of anything off, we abort. Rachel nodded, her arm tightening around his waist to support his weakened frame. The blood loss from his wound had left him dangerously pale, his normally steady movements now requiring visible effort. But his eyes remained sharp, constantly scanning for threats with the situational awareness that had kept him alive through countless operations. Agent Chen approached, holding up a communication device. Agent Kelly confirms your daughters are secure at the facility. She's establishing video contact now. The small screen flickered, then stabilized to show the twins Sophie and Sarah sitting in what appeared to be a comfortable lounge area, Jack Murdoch's imposing figure standing protectively beside them. Daddy, they cried in unison, their faces lighting up at the sight of him. Are you coming to get us soon? Michael's stoic expression softened instantly. Hey, Munchkins. Yes, I'll be there very soon. Are you being good for Uncle Jack? We're playing cards, and he's letting us win, Sophie reported seriously. But he says it's not really letting us win if we're actually better than him. Jack's gruff laugh could be heard in the background. These two are card sharks, Mike. Better watch your allowance money when they get older. The natural interaction, impossible to fake convincingly, was the final verification Michael needed. He nodded to Chen, lowering his weapon slightly. Extraction approved. As the helicopter touched down, a medical team emerged with a stretcher. Michael waved it away, insisting on walking aboard under his own power, despite Rachel's concerned protests. His military pride wouldn't allow him to be carried while conscious, regardless of his condition. Inside the helicopter, the medics immediately began working on his wound, replacing Rachel's field dressing with proper medical care. An IV line delivered much-needed fluids and antibiotics as they lifted off the powerful engines, tilting the aircraft away from the mountains toward the plains beyond. "ETA to facility," Michael asked the medic, his voice strained but commanding. "90 minutes, sir. We'll have you stabilized before arrival." Michael nodded, then turned to Rachel, who sat beside him, clutching the evidence bag. Status of the package. She understood his deliberate vagueness, operational security, in case anyone on the helicopter wasn't fully cleared. Secure, both components intact. They had divided the evidence between them before leaving the cabin, a final insurance policy that Michael had insisted upon, despite Chen's objections. If something went wrong, at least one copy might survive. The helicopter banked sharply, causing Michael to wince as the movement pulled at his wound. The medic adjusted his medication, and Michael felt a wave of unwelcome drowsiness begin to cloud his thoughts. "Rachel," he said urgently, fighting the sedative effect, "if I'm compromised, you maintain mission control. Trust your instincts. Remember the protocols." She nodded, understanding the weight of what he was entrusting to her. In his weakened state, Michael was delegating operational authority, something a lifelong soldier did only in the most extreme circumstances. "I won't let you down," she promised, her hand finding his and squeezing gently. As the medication finally overcame his resistance, Michael's last conscious thought was of his daughter's faces. Everything he had done, every risk taken, every pain endured had been for them. And now their safety depended on a woman he had known for less than a week, but trusted with his life. Rachel watched as Michael finally surrendered to the medication, his features relaxing into the first real rest he had allowed himself since finding her injured by the roadside. Even unconscious, he maintained the alertness of a veteran soldier, his body positioned for quick response, one hand never far from where his weapon would normally be. She turned her attention to Agent Chen, who sat across from them, studying a secure tablet. "Where exactly are we going?" "Classified facility in eastern Colorado," Chen replied without looking up. "Former Cold War installation repurposed for high-security operations. Off the books." "And Morrison, what's being done about him?" Now Chen did look up, his expression carefully neutral. "A team has been dispatched to place him under surveillance. Once we secure your evidence and testimony, formal action will be taken." Something in his phrasing triggered Rachel's suspicion, a corporate negotiator's instinct for evasive language. "Why wait? If Patricia Hoffman provided evidence of coercion and threats, you already have grounds to detain him." "Politics," Chen said simply. "Morrison has powerful allies in Washington. We need an airtight case before moving against someone at his level." The explanation was reasonable, yet Rachel couldn't shake a growing sense of unease. She glanced at Michael, wishing he were conscious to evaluate Chen's responses with his finely tuned threat assessment skills. The helicopter continued its journey across the Colorado landscape, eventually descending toward what appeared to be an isolated compound surrounded by high fences and observation towers. The facility's deliberately unremarkable appearance, administrative buildings, and what looked like storage structures belied its classification level. As they touched down on a landing pad, Rachel noted the security measures with approval. Armed personnel maintained a perimeter, cameras covered every approach, and vehicle barriers protected against unauthorized access. If this was indeed a black site facility, it was well equipped to resist external threats. Medical personnel immediately transferred Michael to a gurney, wheeling him rapidly toward the main building. Rachel moved to follow, but Chen placed a hand on her arm. "Mr. Blackwood, Agent Kelly would like to debrief you immediately while the medical team stabilizes Mr. Reynolds." Rachel hesitated, reluctant to be separated from Michael in this unfamiliar environment. "I'd prefer to stay with him." "The sooner we process your evidence, the sooner we can move against Morrison," Chen countered smoothly. "Every minute counts if we want to prevent him from destroying the additional material." The logic was sound, but Rachel had learned from Michael to trust her instincts above all else. "I'll speak with Agent Kelly after I've seen the girls and confirm Michael is receiving proper care." Chen's expression tightened almost imperceptibly before smoothing into professional neutrality. "Of course. This way, please." He led her into the main building through a series of security checkpoints, where Rachel noted that each guard inspected Chen's credentials carefully, a good sign that security protocols were being properly maintained. They entered a comfortable suite where Sophie and Sarah immediately rushed toward her, their identical faces alight with recognition. "Miss Rachel," they cried, wrapping their arms around her waist. "Where's Daddy, Uncle Jack? Said he was hurt." Rachel knelt to their level, the evidence bag still secure across her body. "Your dad is being taken care of by very good doctors. He's going to be fine, but he needs to rest for a little while." Jack Murdoch approached, his weathered face creased with concern. "How bad?" "Gunshot wound to the side. Significant blood loss, but no vital organs hit." Rachel kept her voice steady, aware of the girls listening. "He was conscious during transport, but sedated for treatment." Jack nodded, understanding the unspoken message. Michael was wounded, but operational. "The girls have been asking for both of you." The twins looked up at Rachel with expressions so like their father's that it made her heart ache. The same determination, the same direct gaze that seemed to assess everything around them. "Is Daddy catching the bad guys?" Sarah asked. Rachel smiled, smoothing the child's hair. "He already did, and now we're all safe." "I want to see him," Sophie insisted, her chin set in a stubborn line that was pure Michael Reynolds. "Soon," Rachel promised, "as soon as the doctors are finished." Jack drew Rachel aside while Chen entertained the girls with a tablet containing children's games, a distraction technique Rachel recognized from her own experience managing difficult corporate situations. "Something feels off," Jack murmured, his voice pitched for her ears only. "Kelly's credentials check out, but the security protocols here are inconsistent." Rachel's instincts, already on alert, sharpened further. "How so?" "External perimeter is solid, but internal compartmentalization is minimal. For a classified facility, there's too much freedom of movement between sectors." Jack's experienced eyes had noticed what Rachel, despite her corporate security background, had missed. "And the communications setup isn't following standard encrypted protocols." Before Rachel could respond, the door opened to admit Anna Kelly herself, the woman's professional demeanor, exactly as Rachel remembered from their brief encounter at Red Rocks. "Ms. Blackwood, thank you for your patience," Kelly said, extending her hand. "I understand your concern for Mr. Reynolds, but I assure you he's receiving the best possible care." Rachel shook her hand, studying the woman's face for any sign of deception. "I'd like to see him." "Of course, he's being moved to recovery now. In the meantime, perhaps we could begin reviewing the evidence you've brought. Time is critical if we want to move against Morrison before he realizes his position is compromised." The repeated emphasis on urgency triggered another warning flag in Rachel's mind. Michael had taught her that pressure was often used to override careful judgment, a tactic he had seen employed in interrogations and compromised operations. "I'd like to wait until Michael is conscious," she said firmly. "The evidence is extensive and complicated. His insights will be valuable to your investigation." A flicker of annoyance crossed Kelly's face before disappearing behind professional composure. "Ms. Blackwood, with all due respect, we have technical experts standing by to analyze the material. Mr. Reynolds' medical team estimates he won't be fully alert for at least 6 hours." "Then I'll wait 6 hours," Rachel replied, matching Kelly's professional tone. "The evidence doesn't leave my possession until Michael and I can present it together. That was our agreement." Jack moved subtly closer to Rachel, his posture communicating silent support. Chen, noticing the tension, approached from where he had been entertaining the twins. "Perhaps a compromise," he suggested smoothly. "Ms. Blackwood could accompany you to the secure analysis room and observe while remaining in possession of the evidence. That way work can begin while respecting her conditions." Kelly considered this, then nodded. "Acceptable. Mr. Murdoch can remain with the children until arrangements are made for them to visit Mr. Reynolds." Jack exchanged a meaningful glance with Rachel, a silent communication that she interpreted clearly. "Be careful. I'll protect the girls." Rachel followed Kelly and Chen through another series of corridors to a room filled with sophisticated computer equipment. 3 technicians looked up as they entered, their expressions professionally neutral. "Ms. Blackwood has agreed to allow preliminary analysis while maintaining physical custody of the evidence," Kelly explained to the team. "Given the sensitivity of the material, this seems a reasonable precaution." The lead technician, a woman in her 40s with the focus intensity of a longtime analyst, nodded. "We can work with that. Ms. Blackwood can connect the drives to our secure terminal herself if she prefers." The accommodation of her security concerns should have been reassuring, but Rachel's unease persisted. Something about the facility, about Kelly's manner, didn't align with Michael's teachings on secure operations. As she carefully connected one of the hard drives to the secure terminal, Rachel maintained awareness of every person in the room, noting their positions and movements, just as Michael had trained her to do. The evidence remained in the waterproof bag across her body, only the drive currently being analyzed removed. The lead technician began examining the files, her fingers flying across the keyboard as she navigated through the complex directory structure. "This is extraordinary," she murmured after several minutes. "The level of detail in these records, financial transfers, communication logs, operational parameters. Enough to build a case against Morrison," Kelly asked, watching the screen intently. "Against Morrison and at least a dozen others," the technician confirmed. "There's a clear chain of evidence showing systematic abuse of surveillance capabilities, unauthorized access to classified systems, and what appears to be coordination with foreign entities." Foreign entities? Chen's surprise seemed genuine. That wasn't in Patricia Hoffman's disclosure. The technician highlighted a series of communications. "These show regular encrypted exchanges with an entity identified only as Sentinel. Based on the routing information, the origin appears to be Eastern European, possibly Russian." Rachel felt a chill run through her. The conspiracy was even more extensive than she had realized. Morrison hadn't just been abusing his position for personal vendettas, he had been compromising national security at the highest levels. "I need to inform Michael," she said, already moving toward the door. "He should know about this development immediately." "Ms. Blackwood, please." Kelly stepped into her path. "Mr. Reynolds is still in recovery. This information won't change his medical condition." "But it changes everything about our situation," Rachel countered. "If foreign intelligence is involved, the threat level has escalated significantly. Michael needs this information to make proper security assessments for his daughters." Her instincts were screaming now, the corporate negotiator's sixth sense, for when a situation was deteriorating beyond salvage. Before Kelly could respond, Rachel's satellite phone, the one Jack had provided, which she had kept concealed in an inner pocket, vibrated with an incoming message. With a fluid movement that would have made Michael proud, Rachel stepped back from Kelly, creating space while reaching for the phone. The message displayed was simple but chilling. "Abort. Facility compromised. Morrison inbound. Extraction team Alpha route." Rachel's mind processed the warning instantly. Jack must have discovered something critical, something that confirmed his suspicions about the facility's security. "Ms. Blackwood?" Kelly's voice had taken on a different quality, sharper, more commanding. "Is there a problem?" "I need to check on some malls," Rachel said, forcing calm into her voice, while her mind raced through the extraction protocols Michael had drilled into her. "A maternal instinct, you might say. I've grown quite attached to them." "The children are perfectly safe with Mr. Murdoch," Chen assured her, moving to block the doorway. "Your evidence is much more valuable at this moment." The shift in his tone from deferential to demanding confirmed everything. This wasn't a secure extraction. It was a carefully orchestrated trap. Rachel made her decision in an instant. "You're right," she said, relaxing her posture slightly as if acquiescing. "The evidence is critical. Perhaps I'm being overly cautious." She turned back toward the computer terminal, noting the positions of everyone in the room. Kelly had moved closer to the evidence bag, while Chen remained at the door. The three technicians were focused on their screens, engrossed in the data. With the smooth motion Michael had taught her during their brief training sessions, Rachel reached into her jacket and withdrew the small caliber pistol he had insisted she carry. Before anyone could react, she had it trained on Kelly, the most immediate threat. "Step back," she ordered, her voice steady despite the adrenaline surging through her system. "Everyone stay exactly where you are." Kelly's expression shifted from surprise to calculation. "Ms. Blackwood, this is completely unnecessary. You're among friends here." "Friends don't lie about their security protocols," Rachel replied, backing toward the secondary exit Michael had taught her to always identify upon entering any room. "And friends don't work for James Morrison." A flicker in Kelly's eyes confirmed the accusation. "You're making a serious mistake. This facility is secure. Whatever you think you know—" "I know Morrison is on his way here right now," Rachel interrupted. "I know this entire extraction was a setup to secure the evidence and eliminate witnesses. And I know Michael Reynolds would never stay unconscious during a critical operation unless he was drugged beyond standard medical protocols." Chen moved slightly, his hand drifting toward his jacket. Rachel swung the pistol toward him. Don't. 20 years in corporate takeovers taught me to recognize when I'm being outmaneuvered. This ends now. With her free hand, she disconnected the hard drive from the terminal, backing slowly toward the door. I'm going to collect Michael and the girls. Anyone who attempts to stop us will regret it. The building is locked down, Kelly said, her pretense of alliance abandoned. Security teams at every exit. You won't make it to the main floor, let alone out of the facility. Rachel allowed herself a small smile, one she had used in countless boardroom confrontations, when holding a winning hand her opponents couldn't see. That's where you're wrong. Michael Reynolds doesn't leave anything to chance, especially when it comes to his daughters. The confidence in her voice was not misplaced. During their journey to the cabin, Michael had briefed her extensively on extraction protocols, including the recognition signs of a compromised facility and the prearranged responses Jack would implement. The fact that Jack had sent the warning message meant he had already initiated Alpha Route, the most aggressive extraction plan in Michael's considerable arsenal. As if on cue, the facility's lights flickered momentarily before emergency systems engaged. A moment later, an alarm began to sound, not the expected security breach alert, but a fire evacuation signal that would trigger automated protocols. That would be our extraction team, Rachel said calmly, backing through the door as confusion erupted among the technicians. I suggest you focus on evacuating before Morrison arrives. He doesn't strike me as the type to leave loose ends, even those who worked for him. Before Kelly or Chen could respond, Rachel was through the door, slamming it shut behind her and jamming it with the emergency brace Michael had taught her to always locate. The corridor beyond was already filling with confused personnel responding to the evacuation alarm. Rachel moved with purpose through the chaos, her corporate experience with crisis management serving her well as she navigated toward the medical wing where Michael would be held. Her appearance, confident and determined, caused most staff to automatically move aside, assuming she was part of the emergency response team. She found the recovery area largely deserted, the medical staff having followed evacuation protocols. Michael lay on a bed in the third room. She checked, still unconscious, but with color returning to his face. Monitoring equipment showed his vital signs were stable, stronger than they should be for someone as severely injured as he had appeared during transport. Michael, she called urgently, shaking his shoulder. Michael, wake up. Extraction protocol Alpha is in effect. His eyes opened immediately, too quickly for someone genuinely sedated. They were clear and alert, showing none of the confusion that should accompany emergence from medical sedation. Report, he said crisply, already disconnecting the monitoring equipment with practiced efficiency. Facility compromised. Morrison inbound. Jack initiated Alpha protocol. Rachel delivered the information in the concise format Michael had taught her, essential details without extraneous information. Michael nodded once, swinging his legs over the side of the bed and standing with only a slight grimace to indicate his wound still caused pain. The girls, with Jack, presumably proceeding to extraction point. Rachel handed him his boots and the sidearm she had recovered from the property lockbox beside his bed. You maintain control of the evidence, Michael asked as he quickly dressed, checking the weapon with practiced movements. Affirmative, but there's more. The data shows Morrison was working with a foreign intelligence entity called Sentinel, Eastern European origin. Michael processed this information with a grim nod. Explains the third-party operators Jack detected. We need to move now. They exited the recovery room into the corridor, which was now in full evacuation mode. Michael led with the confident authority of a man born to command, guiding Rachel through service passages and maintenance corridors that didn't appear on the facility's public schematics. How did you know the facility was compromised? Rachel asked as they navigated a particularly narrow utility tunnel. Never lost consciousness, Michael replied tersely. Counteracted the sedative with techniques from SEER training. Observed inconsistencies in medical protocols and security procedures. Confirmed suspicions when I overheard staff discussing Morrison's imminent arrival. You were playing possum the entire time. Rachel couldn't hide her admiration for his discipline and strategic thinking. A ghost of a smile touched Michael's lips. Rule 1 of special operations, always let your enemy underestimate your capabilities. They emerged from the utility tunnel into what appeared to be a vehicle maintenance bay. Jack Murdoch was waiting with the twins, who rushed to their father with cries of joy as soon as they saw him. Daddy Uncle Jack said we're playing the special hiding game again, Sophie announced as Michael gathered them into a careful embrace, mindful of his injury. That's right, Pumpkin. And you're both doing a great job. Michael's voice softened as it always did with his daughters, though his eyes remained alert and focused. Jack approached, his expression grim. Morrison's helicopter touched down 3 minutes ago. East entrance. He has a tactical team with him, looks like private contractors, not FBI. Deniability, Michael concluded. He's here to clean house, not make arrests. He turned to Rachel. The evidence? She patted the waterproof bag still secured across her body, complete and intact. But they've seen some of it already enough to know about the foreign intelligence connection, which means Morrison will be even more determined to eliminate all witnesses. Michael's tactical mind was already formulating their escape plan. Jack extraction, vehicle. In position, south perimeter maintenance gate. Elena's driving. Jack handed Michael a small communication device. Facility security is compromised at all levels. Morrison's people have override codes for every system. Michael nodded, processing this information with the calm efficiency of a veteran operator. The fire alarm was your distraction. Figured a full evacuation would create maximum confusion. Easier to move the girls through chaos than silence. Good call. Michael checked his weapon one final time, then turned to Rachel. Stay with the girls. Jack and I will create a path to the extraction vehicle. No matter what happens, your priority is getting the evidence and my daughters to safety. Understood. Rachel nodded, recognizing the mission parameters for what they were. Michael placing the safety of his children and the completion of the mission above his own survival. I need your word, Michael insisted, his eyes locking with hers. The girls and the evidence come first. Always. You have my word, Rachel promised, though everything within her rebelled against the implication that she might have to leave him behind. Satisfied, Michael turned to his daughters, kneeling despite the pain it clearly caused him. Girls, we're going to play a very important game now. You need to stay right with Miss Rachel and do exactly what she tells you. No questions, no stopping for anything. Can you do that for me? The twins nodded solemnly, their young faces showing the seriousness with which they took their father's instructions. Good girls. Remember what we practiced. When I say diamonds, you talk. Drop to the ground and cover our heads, they recited in unison. And when I say butterflies, you run as fast as we can to the nearest grown-up we trust. Michael's eyes shone with pride and love. Perfect. Now let's go home. The small group moved through the maintenance bay toward a service door that would lead them to the south perimeter. Michael took point with Jack, bringing up the rear. Rachel kept the twins between them, one hand on each girl's shoulder to guide them quickly and quietly. They had almost reached the service door when a voice behind them froze them in place. Going somewhere, cousin. Michael turned slowly, positioning himself between his family and the newcomer. Deputy Director James Morrison stood at the entrance to the maintenance bay, flanked by 4 men in tactical gear who were unmistakably not standard FBI agents. James, Michael acknowledged, his voice devoid of emotion. Still hiding behind others to do your dirty work, I see. Morrison smiled thinly, his silver hair and expensive suit creating a stark contrast to the armed men beside him. Still clinging to outdated notions of honor, Michael. Some things never change. Rachel observed the physical similarities between the two men, the same strong jaw, similar build, but where Michael's eyes reflected integrity and purpose, Morrison's held only cold ambition. The girls have nothing to do with this, Michael said, his voice steady despite the tension evident in his posture. Let them leave with Rachel. Your quarrel is with me. Morrison laughed, a sound without warmth or humor. Always the noble sacrifice. But I'm afraid Mrs. Blackwood is very much involved. She and her evidence have become quite inconvenient to national security interests. You mean inconvenient to your foreign handlers, Michael countered. We know about Sentinel. We know you've been selling American security capabilities to the highest bidder. A flicker of surprise crossed Morrison's face before his composure returned. Impressive detective work, but ultimately futile. None of you will be leaving this facility except perhaps the children. I'm not completely heartless after all. Diamonds, Michael said calmly. The twins dropped instantly to the floor, covering their heads as practiced. In the same fluid motion, Michael drew his weapon and fired a precise shot, not at Morrison or his men, but at the fire suppression system overhead. White foam erupted throughout the maintenance foe, instantly obscuring vision and creating chaos. Rachel heard Jack's voice behind her, "Go south, exit now." She grabbed the twins, pulling them to their feet and pushing them toward the service door as gunfire erupted through the foam. Michael and Jack were returning fire-creating covering operations that allowed her to reach the exit with the girls. Outside, the afternoon sun momentarily blinded her after the dim interior of the maintenance bay. A black SUV was idling 20 yards away, a woman with Jack's features behind the wheel, Elena, his sister, whom Rachel recognized from photographs in his cabin. "Get in!" Elena shouted, reaching back to open the rear door. Rachel hustled the twins into the vehicle, diving in after them as more gunfire sounded from within the facility. She turned back to see Michael emerging from the doorway, moving with the controlled urgency of a combat veteran despite his injury. Jack was behind him, providing covering fire as they retreated. They had almost reached the SUV when a burst of automatic fire rang out. Jack stumbled, crying out as bullets found their mark. Michael turned instantly, moving to support his fallen friend, despite the danger to himself. "Go!" Jack gasped, pushing Michael away with bloody hands. "Complete the mission." Rachel saw the anguish in Michael's eyes, the soldier's eternal dilemma of leaving a comrade behind. For a fraction of a second, he hesitated. "Daddy!" Sophie screamed from the SUV, her terrified voice cutting through the chaos. The sound of his daughter's fear resolved Michael's conflict. With a final agonized look at Jack, he turned and sprinted for the vehicle, diving into the passenger seat as Elena gunned the engine. "Jack!" Elena cried, seeing her brother fallen in the rearview mirror. "Drive!" Michael ordered, his voice carrying the absolute authority of command. "Get us clear now." The SUV lurched forward, tires spinning on gravel, as Elena navigated through the maintenance gate and onto a service road leading away from the facility. Behind them, Morrison's tactical team had emerged from the building, weapons raised but holding fire as the vehicle rapidly moved out of effective range. "They're not pursuing," Rachel observed, keeping the twins' heads down below window level. "They don't need to," Michael replied grimly, checking his wound, which had begun bleeding again during their escape. "Morrison will have alerted all the law enforcement in the region. Every road, every checkpoint will be looking for us." "Jack," Elena's voice broke as she drove tears streaming down her face. "We can't just leave him." "We didn't," Michael said, his voice gentler than Rachel had ever heard it. "Jack made his choice, the same choice any of us would make. To protect the mission. To protect the children." The twins were huddled against Rachel in the back seat, their small bodies trembling with fear and confusion. "Is Uncle Jack going to be okay?" Sarah asked in a small voice. Michael turned in his seat, meeting his daughter's eyes with the direct honesty he had always shown them. "I don't know, sweetheart. Uncle Jack was hurt trying to protect us. But he's very brave and very strong. We have to be brave too, right now." Both girls nodded, their expressions solemn beyond their years. Rachel held them close, marveling at how Michael had answered truthfully without crushing their hope or traumatizing them further. "Where to?" Elena asked, her professional training reasserting itself despite her grief for her brother. "Secondary extraction point," Michael decided after brief consideration. "Morrison will have the primary location covered. We need to get the evidence to Kelly's superior at the Inspector General's office." "Can we trust anyone at this point?" Rachel asked, the events of the past hour having shattered her already limited faith in government institutions. "One person," Michael confirmed, Director Malcolm Hayes. Jack vetted him personally, former Marines career spent fighting corruption within the system. "If anyone can be trusted with this evidence, it's Hayes. And he can protect the girls." Rachel pressed her priorities, now firmly aligned with Michael's. "He has the resources and authority to place them in a witness protection program immediately." Michael checked his weapon, counting remaining ammunition with practiced efficiency. "But first we have to reach him." Elena guided the SUV through back roads and Forest Service trails, avoiding main highways where roadblocks would certainly be established. Her familiarity with the region, a result of growing up in Colorado, proved invaluable as she navigated routes that wouldn't appear on standard GPS systems. As they drove, Michael maintained communication silence, turning off all electronic devices that could be tracked. The only exception was a specialized communication unit that connected directly to Director Hayes through channels outside normal government protocols, a secure line Jack had established years ago for exactly this type of emergency. Hayes is mobilizing a secure team, Michael reported after making contact. Extraction in 3 hours at the Lincoln Creek trailhead. Until then, we maintain movement and communications blackout. The next hours passed in tense vigilance as they wound through increasingly remote terrain. The twins eventually succumbed to exhaustion, falling asleep against Rachel, despite the vehicle's bouncing progress over rough roads. She found herself unconsciously humming the same lullaby her mother had sung to her as a child, stroking their hair with gentle fingers. Michael watched this interaction from the front seat, his expression softening momentarily before returning to tactical alertness. The bond that had formed between Rachel and his daughters in just a few days was evident, another unexpected outcome of their chaotic meeting by the roadside. As sunset approached, Elena finally brought the SUV to a stop in a densely wooded area several miles from the designated extraction point. "We should proceed on foot from here," she suggested. "Vehicle is too easily spotted, especially after dark when headlights would give us away." Michael nodded his agreement. Rachel waked the girls. Elena survival packs. Elena retrieved 4 small backpacks from the vehicle's cargo area. Emergency kits Jack had prepared containing essential supplies for each of them, including the twins. The level of preparation spoke volumes about the Murdoch siblings' operational mindset. As they prepared to begin the final leg of their journey on foot, Michael pulled Rachel aside. "I need to know you're prepared for what might happen next." "Whatever it takes to keep the girls safe," Rachel replied without hesitation. "And to finish what we started." Michael studied her face, seeing the corporate executive who had appeared on his land just days ago, now transformed into something else. A woman with the same unwavering determination he recognized in himself. "Hayes will prioritize the children's safety," he continued. "But the evidence you carry threatens powerful people beyond just Morrison. Once it becomes public, the repercussions will be significant." "I built a technology empire from nothing," Rachel said with quiet confidence. "I can rebuild my life if necessary. What matters is justice for my brother, for Patricia, for Jack." Michael nodded, satisfied with her resolve. "One more thing," he added, his voice lowering further. "If something happens to me—" "Don't," Rachel interrupted, unwilling to hear the contingencies she had been forcing from her mind. "You need to hear this," Michael insisted gently. "If something happens, Hayes will ensure the girls are placed with good people. But they'll need someone who knew me, who can tell them about their father when they're older. Someone I trusted." The implication was clear. Michael was naming her as the connection to his memory, the keeper of his legacy for his daughters. The responsibility settled on Rachel's shoulders like a sacred trust. "I'll make sure they never forget the man you are," she promised, deliberately using the present tense. The small group set off through the forest. As the last light faded from the sky, Michael leading, despite his injury, which he refused to acknowledge was slowing him down. Elena took the rear position, her military training evident in her movement and vigilance. Rachel kept the twins between them, the girls now fully awake and following their father's instructions with solemn dedication. They had covered perhaps a mile when Michael suddenly raised his fist, the universal signal to stop and maintain silence. Everyone froze in place, the twins remembering their drills perfectly. For several long moments, the forest seemed to hold its breath. Then Rachel heard it too, the faint but distinctive sound of a helicopter approaching from the east. "Down," Michael ordered quietly. "Everyone under cover, now." They moved quickly beneath a stand of dense pines, pulling branches to conceal their position as the helicopter drew nearer. Its searchlights swept the forest canopy in a methodical pattern that indicated it was searching rather than transiting. "Morrison," Rachel whispered. Michael nodded grimly. "He's anticipated our extraction plan. The question is whether he's guessing or has specific intelligence on our location." The helicopter hovered overhead for what seemed an eternity, its powerful searchlight penetrating gaps in the forest canopy, but missing their position beneath the dense pines. Finally, it moved on, continuing its search pattern to the west. "They'll have ground teams," Michael observed once the aircraft was out of earshot. "Standard search protocol would establish a perimeter and work inward." "Which means the extraction point is likely compromised," Elena concluded. Michael considered their options, his tactical mind calculating risks and alternatives with practiced efficiency. "We need to contact Hayes, warn him about the search operation." "Communications blackout," Rachel reminded him. "Any transmission could be intercepted." "Calculated risk," Michael decided. Better Hayes knows what he's flying into than walks into an ambush. He activated the secure communication unit, keeping his message brief and coded. After receiving confirmation that Hayes understood the warning, Michael outlined a new plan. Hayes is diverting to secondary extraction point Old Firewatch Tower 2 miles northwest. We'll need to circle around the search perimeter to reach it. The new route would take them through even rougher terrain, including a steep ravine that would be challenging for the twins. But the alternative encountering Morrison's search teams was unacceptable. They moved out again, and Michael setting a careful pace that balanced speed with silence. The girls were beginning to show signs of fatigue, but maintained remarkable discipline for children their age, a testament to Michael's preparation and training. They had nearly reached the ravine when Elena, bringing up the rear, suddenly signaled for them to stop. Michael immediately directed Rachel and the twins to take cover behind a fallen tree, while he moved back to confer with Elena. "Movement behind us," she whispered. Two-man team moving quietly but definitely tracking. Michael processed this information with the calm assessment of a veteran operator. Distance, quarter mile, maybe less. Professional operators using thermal imaging based on their movement pattern. The situation was deteriorating rapidly, with Morrison's team closing from behind and the ravine ahead, a bottleneck where they would be vulnerable. Their options were severely limited. Michael made his decision. "We split up. Elena, you take Rachel and the girls to the extraction point. I'll create a diversion, draw the pursuit away." "Michael, no," Rachel protested immediately. "You're injured. If they catch you—" "They won't," he interrupted with quiet confidence. "This is what I was trained for. And the mission, the girls, and the evidence has to come first. You gave me your word, remember?" The reminder of her promise silenced Rachel's objection, though everything within her rebelled against the plan. The thought of Michael facing Morrison's team alone, wounded and outnumbered, was almost unbearable. "Daddy, don't go," Sarah whispered, having overheard enough to understand her father was leaving them. Michael knelt beside his daughters, his expression gentle but resolute. "Remember what I taught you about being brave. Sometimes being brave means letting other people help you. Miss Rachel and Elena are going to take you somewhere safe, and I'll meet you there as soon as I can." "Promise?" Sophie asked, her small hand gripping his sleeve. Michael hesitated a fraction of a second that spoke volumes. He never lied to his daughters, even when the truth was difficult. "I promise I'll do everything in my power to come back to you. Always." It wasn't the absolute assurance the girls wanted, but it was honest, and they recognized that their father's word once given was unbreakable. Michael turned to Rachel, his eyes conveying what his words couldn't in front of the children. "Get them to Hayes. No matter what you hear, no matter what happens, don't stop and don't look back." Rachel nodded, unable to speak past the knot in her throat. Michael held her gaze for a moment longer, then turned to Elena. "Northeast route through the ravine. Hayes knows the contingency plan." "Understood." Elena confirmed, her professional demeanor masking the emotion in her eyes. "Good hunting." Michael checked his weapon one final time, then melted into the forest with the silent efficiency that had made him a legend among special operators. Within seconds, he had vanished completely from view. Rachel gathered the twins close, whispering encouragement as Elena led them toward the ravine. They had just begun their descent when the sound of gunfire erupted behind them, sharp cracks that shattered the forest silence. The twins froze, their faces pale with fear. "Daddy," Sophie whispered. "Keep moving," Elena ordered gently but firmly. "Your father is creating the diversion we need. The best way to help him is to reach the extraction point." Rachel reinforced the message, guiding the girls down the steep slope with careful urgency. The gunfire continued intermittently, moving gradually westward away from their position. Michael was successfully drawing the pursuit away from them, giving them the chance to escape. They reached the bottom of the ravine and began the climb up the opposite side when a new sound joined the distant gunfire, the helicopter returning its powerful engines, audible long before the aircraft itself appeared over the forest canopy. "Move faster," Elena urged as the helicopter's searchlight began sweeping the area where the gunfire had been heard. "We need to reach the tree line before they expand their search pattern." The climb was arduous, the twins struggling with the steep terrain despite their determination. Rachel found herself carrying Sarah for the final portion, the child's exhaustion finally overcoming her resolve. Elena supported Sophie, both women pushing beyond their own fatigue to reach the safety of the dense forest above. They had just made it to the tree line when the forest behind them erupted with new gunfire, more intense, more sustained than before. The helicopter's searchlight locked onto a position near where they had separated from Michael, its powerful beam illuminating the area as clearly as daylight. Rachel forced herself not to look back, remembering Michael's final instruction. The mission came first, the girls, and the evidence had to reach safety. But each burst of gunfire felt like a physical blow, knowing Michael was alone against overwhelming odds. Elena led them through the forest with grim determination, her knowledge of wilderness navigation proving invaluable as they approached the Firewatch Tower that served as their new extraction point. The structure loomed ahead, a skeletal silhouette against the night sky. There, Elena pointed. Hayes should be waiting with the extraction team. As they approached the clearing surrounding the tower, Rachel felt the twins tense beside her. After everything they had experienced, the children's trust had narrowed to a precious few individuals, and strangers, even those sent to help, would trigger their wariness. It's okay, she assured them, though her own anxiety was mounting. These are good people your daddy arranged to help us. The clearing appeared empty. When they reached it, no sign of Hayes or an extraction team. Elena signaled for them to wait at the edge of the trees while she moved forward to investigate her weapon ready. She had taken only a few steps when floodlights suddenly illuminated the entire clearing, blinding them with their intensity. From the tower and surrounding woods, armed figures emerged, not the extraction team they had expected, but Morrison's tactical operators in full combat gear. Ms. Blackwood, James Morrison's voice called from the darkness beyond the lights. I believe this is the end of your journey. Please surrender the evidence, and we can resolve this situation without further violence. Elena had dropped to a defensive position at the first sign of ambush, her weapon trained on the nearest operator. Back to the trees, she hissed to Rachel. Go now. But retreat was impossible. More of Morrison's team had materialized behind them, cutting off their escape route. They were completely surrounded. Rachel pulled the twins close, shielding them with her body as she desperately sought a solution. The evidence bag was still secure across her chest, the culmination of everything they had fought for, everything Jack had died for, everything Michael was still fighting for somewhere in the darkness. Ms. Blackwood. Morrison emerged into the light as immaculately dressed as ever, despite the wilderness setting. Those children have been through enough trauma. Please don't add to it by forcing us to take more drastic measures. His cold eyes moved to the twins, the implied threat unmistakable. Rachel felt fury rise within her, a protective rage so intense it momentarily overcame her fear. You would threaten children, she challenged, her voice carrying across the clearing. Your own blood relatives. Collateral considerations in a national security operation? Morrison replied with clinical detachment. The evidence, Ms. Blackwood? No. Elena had shifted position, placing herself between Morrison's men and Rachel with the twins. Her weapon remained steady, though she was hopelessly outnumbered. Elena Murdoch, Morrison acknowledged with a thin smile. Your brother made his choice. You still have the opportunity to make a wiser one. My brother was worth 10 of you, Elena spat, her grief and rage evident beneath her professional exterior. And Michael Reynolds will hunt you to the ends of the earth for this. Michael Reynolds is no longer a factor in this equation, Morrison replied with chilling finality. The helicopter team confirmed a successful neutralization operation 15 minutes ago. The words hit Rachel like a physical blow. Neutralization operation, the clinical euphemism for killing. Michael gone. The possibility she had refused to acknowledge now presented as cold fact. The twins didn't understand the full implication of Morrison's statement, but they sensed Rachel's distress. Where's Daddy? Sophie demanded, her young voice carrying a strength beyond her years. You promised he would come. Rachel knelt beside the girl, struggling to maintain composure when her world was collapsing around her. Your father, she began but couldn't continue. Your father sent me to get you, a new voice called from the darkness beyond the floodlights. And he always keeps his promises. Morrison whirled toward the voice, his composure finally cracking. Impossible! Michael Reynolds stepped into the edge of the light, his tactical gear torn and bloodied, but his stance unwavering. Behind him, more figures emerged from the darkness. Not Morrison's operatives, but a different team entirely, their weapons trained on Morrison's men with professional precision. Director Hayes sends his regards, Michael said, his voice carrying the quiet authority that had defined him throughout his career, along with a special activities division team who don't appear on any official roster. Convenient for situations requiring discretion. The twins broke from Rachel's embrace, running toward their father with cries of joy. Michael knelt to receive them, gathering them close, despite the obvious pain the movement caused him. Over their heads, his eyes met Rachel's, conveying in a single glance everything words couldn't express. Relief, exhaustion, victory. "It's over, James," Michael said, rising slowly with a daughter held securely in each arm. "Hayes has the backup copy of the evidence. Every document, every recording, every piece of the conspiracy you built. The Inspector General's office is moving against your network as we speak." Morrison's face contorted with fury and disbelief. "You can't possibly believe you've won. Do you have any idea who I'm working with? The power they wield, this goes beyond me, beyond the FBI, beyond anything you can imagine." "I know exactly who you're working with," Michael replied calmly. "Sentinel, Russian intelligence assets targeting American security infrastructure. The same people who approached you 20 years ago in Sarajevo, offering you power in exchange for compromise." The revelation struck Morrison visibly. "How could you possibly?" "Thomas Blackwood," Michael interrupted. "Lieutenant Blackwood kept his own records of the Sarajevo operation. Records he shared with his sister before he'd bet insurance against exactly this scenario." Rachel stepped forward, understanding flowing through her like an electric current. Thomas had never fully explained why he had given her those encrypted files, asking her only to keep them secure and untouched, unless something happened to him. They had been part of the evidence all along, the final piece that completed the puzzle of Morrison's decades-long betrayal. "My brother knew," she said, meeting Morrison's furious gaze with calm defiance. "He recognized the pattern when the technology theft began at my company. He was building a case against you when he died. And now we've finished what he started," Michael concluded. "It's over, James. The only question remaining is whether you face American justice or the consequences your Russian handlers typically impose on compromised assets." Morrison's expression shifted from fury to calculation, the survival instinct of a cornered predator. His hand moved slightly, and Rachel noticed for the first time that he was wearing a communication device in his ear. "Protocol Omega," Morrison said suddenly, the command clearly directed to his tactical team. "Execute now." The clearing erupted in chaos as Morrison's men opened fire, not at Michael or Rachel, but at the SAD team positioned around the perimeter. It was a desperate gambit, a final attempt to create enough confusion for Morrison to escape. Michael reacted instantly, shielding the twins with his body as he dove for cover behind a fallen log. Elena grabbed Rachel, pulling her down as bullets whizzed overhead. The SAD team returned fire with disciplined precision, their superior training evident as they methodically neutralized the threat. Through the gunfire and shouting, Rachel caught a glimpse of Morrison running toward the forest edge, where a vehicle waited his escape plan already in motion. Without conscious thought, she broke from Elena's protection, sprinting after him with the evidence bag bouncing against her side. "Rachel, no." Michael's voice called behind her, but she was already committed, driven by something beyond rational thought. This man had threatened Michael's daughters, had nearly destroyed everything and everyone she cared about. He would not escape justice. Morrison reached the waiting vehicle, a black SUV with diplomatic plates, Rachel noted distantly, and was climbing into the passenger seat when she caught up to him. With strength born of rage and adrenaline, she grabbed his arm, pulling him back. "This is for Thomas," she said, driving her knee upward with all the force she could muster. Morrison doubled over in pain but recovered quickly, his combat training evident as he struck back with calculated precision. The blow caught Rachel across the temple, sending her stumbling backward as stars exploded in her vision. "You should have taken the easy way out," Morrison snarled, drawing a concealed weapon from his ankle holster. "Now I'll finish what I should have done when you first became a problem." Rachel braced herself for the shot, a strange calm descending, as she realized she had at least prevented Morrison's immediate escape. Michael would protect the girls. The evidence would reach Hayes. The mission would be completed even if she didn't survive to see it, but the shot never came. Instead, Morrison's expression changed to one of surprise, then pain. He looked down at his chest, where a small red dot had appeared on his immaculate shirt, expanding rapidly as blood spread from the precision shot that had found its mark. He collapsed to his knees, the weapon falling from nerveless fingers. Behind him, Michael stood at the edge of the clearing, his sidearms still raised in the perfect shooting stance that had defined his military career. Even wounded, even exhausted, his aim had been flawless. "That was for my daughters," Michael said quietly as Morrison toppled forward onto the forest floor. "And for everyone else you betrayed." The remaining gunfire had ceased, the SAD team having neutralized Morrison's operatives with ruthless efficiency. In the sudden silence, Rachel could hear the twins calling for their father, their voices high with fear and confusion. Michael secured his weapon and moved to Rachel's side, helping her to her feet with gentle hands. "Are you hurt?" She shook her head, though the blow to her temple had left her disoriented. "The girls—" "Safe with Elena," Michael assured her. "Hayes' team has secured the perimeter. It's over, Rachel. Really over." The realization washed over her in waves, relief, exhaustion, and something else she wasn't ready to name yet. They had won. Against impossible odds, against the full resources of a corrupt FBI deputy director and his foreign handlers, they had prevailed. "Thomas would be proud," Michael said softly, understanding her thoughts without her having to speak them. "He always said his sister was the strongest person he knew. Now I understand why." Rachel looked up at this remarkable man who had entered her life through the most improbable of circumstances, a chance encounter that had changed everything. In less than a week, he had become her protector, her partner, in something far more profound that neither of them had anticipated. "Your daughters need you," she said, nodding toward where the twins stood with Elena, their small faces anxious as they watched for their father's return. Michael's expression softened, the hardened warrior giving way to the devoted father. "They need both of us," he corrected gently, "if you're willing." The implication that she had become essential not just to this mission, but to their family touched Rachel more deeply than any declaration could have. She found herself nodding, unable to speak, past the emotion tightening her throat. Together, they walked back toward the twins, leaving Morrison and his shattered conspiracy behind them. Director Hayes was approaching from the opposite direction, his distinguished appearance contrasting with the tactical operators who accompanied him. "Reynolds," Hayes acknowledged with the respect one warrior accords another. "Mission accomplished. The evidence is secure and Morrison's network is being dismantled as we speak." Michael nodded, accepting the validation without comment. His focus remained on his daughters, who rushed to meet him, and Rachel with the resilience only children possess. "Is the bad man gone?" Sarah asked, her small face serious beyond her years. "Yes, sweetheart," Michael assured her, gathering both girls close. "The bad man can't hurt anyone anymore." "Can we go home now?" Sophie asked hopefully. "I miss Captain Whiskers." Michael exchanged glances with Rachel, a silent communication passing between them. The ranch in Montana, the place where their journey had begun, had become something more than just Michael's property. It had become a symbol of everything they had fought to protect. "Yes," Michael said, his eyes never leaving Rachel's. "We're going home." 2 months later, Rachel stood on the porch of the Reynolds Ranch, watching as Michael taught the twins to ride their new ponies in the golden afternoon light. The autumn wind played with her hair as she cradled a mug of hot chocolate between her hands, savoring the peaceful scene before her. The aftermath of what the media had dubbed the Morrison conspiracy had been chaotic and demanding. Congressional hearings, intelligence community debriefings, and endless legal proceedings had consumed weeks of their time. Rachel's technology company had been placed under temporary government oversight, while the full extent of the security breach was assessed and contained. But through it all, Michael had remained her steadfast partner, navigating the political minefields with the same tactical precision he had shown in combat. His testimony before the Senate Intelligence Committee had been hailed as a model of clarity and integrity, presenting the facts without political consideration or personal agenda. Jack Murdoch had survived his injuries, though his recovery would be long and challenging. He and Elena had become regular visitors to the ranch, their bond with Michael's family strengthened by the crucible they had endured together. The twins had shown remarkable resilience, as children often do when surrounded by love and security. They had embraced Rachel as a permanent part of their lives with the uncomplicated acceptance that had characterized their first meeting by the roadside. "Daddy, look at me," Sophie called, guiding her pony through a simple figure-8 pattern Michael had taught her. "I'm doing it by myself." "Perfect pumpkin," Michael called back, his pride evident even from a distance. Keep your heels down, just like that. Rachel smiled, warmed by more than just the hot chocolate. This man, this extraordinary, honorable, devoted father, had become the center of her world in ways she had never imagined possible when she crashed her car near his property. "They're natural riders," Michael observed as he joined her on the porch, his arms slipping comfortably around her waist. "Must be in the Reynolds blood." "Along with stubbornness, integrity, and an unfortunate tendency to get shot at," Rachel teased, leaning into his embrace. Michael chuckled, the sound still rare enough to be treasured. "The getting shot at part should be finished now. Director Hayes has assured me that the last of Morrison's network has been dismantled. And Sentinel. Russian intelligence has disavowed all connection, of course, but the exposure was significant enough to disrupt their operations for the foreseeable future." Michael's expression grew more serious. "Your brother would be proud of what you accomplished, Rachel. You finished his mission." "We finished it," she corrected gently. "Together." Michael nodded, acknowledging the truth of her statement. Their journey had transformed them both, the corporate executive and the special operator, finding in each other the perfect complement to their respective strengths. As the sun began to set behind the Montana mountains, painting the sky in brilliant oranges and purples, Michael turned to face Rachel directly. His eyes, once so guarded and vigilant, now held a warmth and peace she treasured above all else. "I've been thinking," he began, uncharacteristically hesitant, "about the future, about us." Rachel felt her heart quicken. "What about us?" "The girls need stability, a family, a mother figure who embodies the values I want them to grow up with: intelligence, courage, integrity." Michael took her hands in his touch gentle but sure. "And I need a partner who understands both sides of me, the soldier and the father. Someone I can trust with everything I am." The simple eloquence of his words, so characteristic of the man himself, brought tears to Rachel's eyes. There was no grand romantic gesture, no elaborate declaration, just the honest truth of a man who had learned to value directness above all else. "Are you asking me to stay?" she whispered. "I'm asking you to build a life with us." Michael clarified, his gaze steady and certain. "To make this ranch your home. To help me raise two extraordinary girls who already love you. To be my wife, my partner, my equal in everything that matters." In the distance, the twins were walking their ponies back to the small stable, their laughter carrying on the evening breeze. They represented everything Michael valued most in the world, and he was offering to share that precious responsibility with her. "Yes," Rachel said simply, the corporate negotiator who had once crafted elaborate agreements, finding that a single word could encompass everything that mattered. "Yes to all of it." Michael's smile, rare and brilliant, transformed his face as he gathered her into his arms. Their journey had begun with danger and desperation, but had led them to something neither had expected: to find a second chance at family, at trust, at love. As twilight settled over the Montana ranch, Rachel Blackwood realized that the man who had saved her had also given her the greatest gift possible: a home where her strength was valued, her courage celebrated, and her heart finally at peace. For Michael Reynolds, the former special operator who had spent his life protecting others, the greatest mission of his career had led to its most meaningful reward: a family made stronger by the bonds forged in adversity, and a love built on the unshakable foundation of shared values and mutual respect. Together, they had discovered that sometimes the most unlikely meetings lead to the most extraordinary journeys, and that true strength isn't found in facing danger alone, but in the courage to build something worth protecting. The end.